What's up, everybody? What's going on? I think we got a pretty good show. If you want to talk about fishing, especially some bass fishing, and I think these guys, because I know Thomas just had a gentleman on talking snakehead, and it's very prevalent here, especially up in around Susquehanna, where the other gentlemen from Beer and Bass Radio are here. And I got to watch these guys, and I do a lot of driving during the day for work, and I've got to pick up Beer and Bass, and I listen to them every Saturday morning after their Friday night show. And now I've been listening to a lot of Thomas stuff from the mostly the Potomac. The Potomac probably intrigues me more. I've been there a handful of times, we'll say 20 times by myself and with some other guys. So I'm going to get ready to bring these up. And if you want to talk some fishing, man, let's go. Let's rock and roll. Gentlemen, we're going to bring them all up real quick. Let me see if I set this up right. Need a producer.
That's the story of our life.
Oh, shit. He's on too many technical difficulties, but I don't know why you're not showing up there. All right, we're get rid of that one. Let's do this one. I'll bring you guys up.
There's one person.
Hello.
No, that's not what I want.
What up?
That's not what I want. I just had everybody, and that's not really what I want. That's what a producer is. Let me click through it all. For God's sake.
We just had it.
That's the one. How come you guys ain't showing up? You guys are showing up now, but why weren't you showing up before? That's what I wanted.
There we go.
That's kind of what I wanted.
Come on.
All right, guys. We got the guys from Beer and Bass Radio, their podcast on Facebook and on YouTube. And then we got Thomas, the same thing. He is on YouTube and Facebook and mostly on YouTube though, right?
Also Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, all the places you listen to your podcast. You've been doing it for a couple of years. You've been doing it for a while. Yeah, about we're almost 3 years in. This November will be 3 years in.
How's it been? How is it? How's it been? Has it been tough going? Has it been tough? How did it take a while before you really built a pretty good audience? Honestly, it's just been slow and steady, honestly. And every year it feels like you just gain more traction. At this point, we'll be closing in on 300 podcast episodes by probably August. And that doesn't include live streams and things like that we've talked about. And then you guys, how long you guys been putting it up, Chad?
Almost 2 years now.
Yeah, I think we're going to be going on almost 3 years in December, won't we?
It was either December or like early winter time, like January, something like that.
Yeah,
we got to go back and look and check it out.
Yeah,
Me too.
I think it's 3 years in like December or January.
I think it's 2.
We'll have to look.
We'll have to go back and look.
We kind of forgot. We just
it all just mixes together now.
We've been on episode 69 for about a year and a half now.
Yeah,
that's always a good episode. Yeah, I told him that I pulled out my this is when I started bass fishing. A friend of mine's kind of, I was just a weekend warrior, which I still am now. I don't do as many tournaments, which I think I'm going to hit a couple this year with a club called the Wednesday Only Club. They do a lot of the Eastern Shore, and I'm going to do a couple of them this year. They've already had a couple of them, but I've kind of haven't did it so much. I think it's been almost 2 years. I started a bass club, me and my buddy, called the River Runners, and it was it's a big kayak tournament now with a bunch of guys, but we wanted it to be more John boat friendly guys. Instead of all the big boats, we wanted the guys that had John boats and stuff like that to come around and fish. That don't have the real big boats. I mean, mine was probably, somebody has like trackers or something like mine. And it went pretty good. And then we entertained and brought in one glass boat, and then it got to be another glass boat. And then it really just kind of, them guys that had the glass boats, they could be a pain in the rump.
I take offense to that.
Now you guys got some pretty nice boats, and we'll talk about your new boat, and then you're getting one redone. But I started as a co-angler with this club here called the Bass and Bunch. They were out of Edgewood, Maryland. And the reason I left that is probably one of the reasons that I'm hearing all this crap going on. I've been listening to a couple podcasts. I just listened to Ike last night and the Zaldanes, their last podcast. And I'm telling you, man, it's really, bass fishing's really kind of been a crap show lately when it comes to the men. But I ended up hooking up with my buddy. My first boat was a little John boat, 14 foot, $600, fiberglass, and used to fish all over Dundee before I was renting the boats out of Dundee. But most of it's in Seneca, Gunpowder. That's kind of where I fished all the time. And once I met my buddy, we spent more time down here on the Eastern Shore, and he introduced me to the Potomac. And I got into tournament fishing, and it was fun. It was fun for a while. But after the Bass and Bunch, it was the same thing. A lot of bitching. Almost every tournament was almost a bunch of bitching. It's just like, it really got annoying. I learned a lot. That was the main reason I got into co-angling. So I'm wondering, I'm trying to start this off. When it comes to bass fishing right now, I think it's a crap show. And right now, I'm really starting to promote. I got another woman coming on next week. Her name's D.M.V. She's a kayak bass fisherman. I've been watching Christine Fisher. Mm-hmm. She's switching over to boats from the kayaking. I just had on Cindy Adler. She just did her first season this year as a boater. She was a co-angler. And I really want your guys' idea when it comes to bass fishing. You guys really do a lot of tournaments. I mean, you guys travel a lot, the guys from Beer and Bass. So my first question to you is, how do you think the bass fishing with the guys and everything is going? You know, I mean, do you think it's really becoming such a whiny, crying, bitching? I mean, the stuff I heard with some of the rookies today, you know, it's with the opens, and I know I'm jumping around a lot.
No, I'm totally on pace with what you're saying, and you're right. I don't think it's new though. I mean, skirting, as far as like the rookies and skirting the gray area of the rules, that's been around forever. I mean, Roland Martin was the king of the gray area. You know, there were so many rules made for Roland Martin because of things that he did, because there weren't rules against it. This latest situation with and not grouping all the rookies, it's specific people. To say the rookies coming in is kind of
that was very sensitive.
Yeah, it's not necessarily just the entire group of rookies. It's a couple of people that are kind of giving them a bad name. And I mean, honestly, I think what they did was shitty. We can go more into that, but I think as a whole, it's been this way as long as I've been in bass fishing. I mean, whenever you get into tournaments, there's always some sort of drama. There's always, cheating scandals. There's, people who, skirt that gray area. And people are always looking for a way to get a hit. I really enjoy tournament fishing. I love traveling. I love breaking down new bodies of water. That's what I get out of tournament fishing. I love going places I've never been before, figuring out the predominant pattern and being successful. That's what I get out of it.
Didn't Ish Monroe physically throw Keith Pochet into the water like many years ago?
Yeah, there was.
They did down the Kissimmee chain. I think it was down Kissimmee.
Yeah, it was in the lock in Toho. Because Keith came into, apparently, from everything that I've heard, Keith came into the lock a little hot and ran into Ish's boat, and Ish had a problem with it, and Ish took care of said problem.
But that was like swindle when that was at one tournament when he come blasting by everybody on that one tournament that I forgot exactly why the whole reason was.
That was a classic.
That was a classic.
Wiley? I think it was Wiley.
It was Lake Wiley. Yep. Yeah. You're right.
Yeah, I remember that. It was a weird situation though. Like apparently somebody waved him through, and he was kind of like, "Well, is it better for me to just run through or to slow down or what?" Yeah, that was a weird one. But
yeah, they were. and the guys fishing were in the middle of the channel, and that was a more of a miscommunication issue. He shouldn't have done it, obviously, because running past people that close. I actually had that happen to me a couple weeks ago on the gunpowder. Somebody running a 6 mile an hour zone and came by me at about 55, 60 miles an hour, about 10 feet from my boat. I was not happy about it. So I understand, the issue there, but
and this idea that like, okay, well, is this now the worst thing ever? We've heard this in baseball and football and soccer, that this is our generation's worstest thing ever, and it's really not. I mean, when side scan came around, people thought like we might as well just quit, put the boats home with all this fancy technology. The difference is TikTok wasn't invented till 2016.
Yep.
Twitter was in its infancy back then. There are these massive echo chambers, and now that everything is being homogenized into one monopoly when it comes from the corporate side of fishing, no press is bad press. And that's why you have James Watson saying like he's a victim, but by the way, please go to his merch store and buy his stuff. He'll be sold out in 24 hours. Like that was convenient. That's the generation we're in now.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And even before that, when mapping came out, before side scan, mapping changed bass fishing in a way very similar to what forward facing sonar has. Where you were able to, you didn't have to triangulate, use 3 points on the shore to figure out where you were, and it established pattern fishing. You could look at a map, you look at your topo map and see that, okay, I'm catching fish on a point. It looks like this. Let me pull up my map. Okay, here's 7 other points that are just like this. Now I can go to each one of these and I can run that whole lake. It opened up everything that was hidden.
I still think I don't think I've ever heard as much crap as I've heard.
Well,
I was not even going to bring it up, but but
it's like Tom said though. We didn't have social media. We didn't have social media.
No.
The platforms for the communication wasn't out. When mapping came out, it was people, especially in like the middle of the country on like Tennessee River lakes, they thought it was the end of the world because everybody knew where the ledges were. Instead of 3 or 4 people knowing where those hot spots on the ledges were, everybody knew about it.
There wasn't a podcast 4 hours later on this guy did this or this guy said this.
Also true.
Yeah, you had that too. The access of information is insane now. You hear people that say, oh, well, it took me 30 years to learn this. Well, what does a high school kid have better to do than watch YouTube videos on everything you said that you took 30 years to learn? You put it on YouTube for a few views. Yeah. You can't really fault people for the access of information. I mean, it's exponentially faster to learn now than it was 30 years ago.
Yes, but let's make sure we also distinguish here, because 2 things can be true at once. Is there more information available? Can you put out an educational content? Yes. Are people doing clickbait things that are just for drama's sake because people know the algorithm likes that? Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's what you're seeing more of with not just podcasts, but people coming on with these announcements like The Talk. And I had to do this because it's all staged. A lot of it's staged because they know that will sell. And then they can ask for more money from their sponsors. Like, let's call a spade with where it is. And I just feel like you see this in other industries on YouTube, on social media. Look at what boxing has done, MMA, football. They will do these almost constructed drama. Now we're just seeing that in fishing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And social media is so much more important to sponsors now than tournament fishing. Well, in 20 years ago, if you won a tournament, that's what sponsors cared about. Yeah. Now it's more about the number of YouTube views you get.
The views and count, and the views and subscribers and stuff like that. But I'm sorry. Everybody keeps telling me that look, I'm not against technology, because one of my favorite things that I appreciated was I came home one day and I had my phone and I put on the Bassmaster, one of the Elite Series. And that's when they were in Middle River. And I got to take that from my phone and stick it up on my 50-inch screen TV. And I got to watch Aaron Martins pull a 7-pounder under a dock that places that I fished. and how he fished it. And that's where I really realized how important tide was, because he was showing you on your graph, the tide needs to be here. We need the tide to be here. Once it gets here, the fish will start biting. That's what they learn when it comes to that stuff. I still don't believe that. I just think that there's going to be a limitation. I don't think that, what we're talking about, I don't think that needs to be in there. I don't think a lot of guys would be there. I can't say they won't compete, but I still don't think that some of them would be there without it. That's just my opinion. But when it comes up to the Susquehanna and stuff like that, have you guys really seen? Because when I used to fish Seneca, I'm sorry, there's all kind of comments, and I'm not even paying attention. I'm listening to you guys. There's like a shit ton of stuff up there.
Are the comments on YouTube or
they're
Facebook and YouTube?
What's up, Bass and Beer Radio?
Here we go. I was on the wrong thing. Right on.
Robert Wagner, what's up? Bass and Beer. Okay, here's the guys.
Well, can I ask you guys something? How sincere did you think that whole James Watson thing was?
Which one? Because there's been a lot of James Watson stuff.
Yeah. when the OG, when this thing popped this year, it felt so much more like an MMA, Logan Paul, Mike Tyson, like pimp pump, just to get like so many things stirred. And I really believed it until it was like how quickly the merch was ready for this whole thing. And I don't know, like it just doesn't feel right to me.
So I will say that James Watson is a very savvy business person. And I think he was using social media to
100%.
Get his point out. And he very quickly saw that he could make money off of it. He kind of saw the writing on the wall. And like, we know for many years that people have had a problem with Boyd Duckett. And he's expressed it for a long time. So I really think that he, because of his business savvy, was able to transition into more of a marketing while still promoting his issue, because his issues are legitimate when you look at it.
How many of these people that stir the pot do you think are actually relevant? Because when was the last time James Watson was relevant? Or this Zaldane?
Same thing.
So I will say, that's a very good point. James Watson is self-admittedly never going. He was going to, be in position. And this is his words. I'll be in position to maybe top 10 or win one tournament a year. He built his brand based off of him being a funny guy,
and the Whopper Plopper.
And a Whopper Plopper. He did win an FLW tournament on Cherokee. I think on Cherokee it was on Douglas. But James Watson's never been a fantastic fisherman, and that's kind of his point with all of the stuff that was going on, is like changing the bar, shifting the bar of qualification, because like he knows he's not going to be in that top 50. So he built his brand based on being an entertaining person. He's funny to watch. He's great on live, and he built his brand on that. And that's kind of what it seems like set him off, was the changing of the standards for requalification, because he's built that this is what he's built with his sponsors. He has to fish XY, either the Elite Series. A lot of his sponsors, he has to either fish the Elite Series or MLF or the BPT. And obviously he can't just go fish the BPT or the Elite Series, because he would have to qualify for it. He built his brand, started in the cup events, invested money, and built his brand around that. Like, he doesn't make his money tournament fishing like very few people do. That's very, very few people can make their living tournament fishing. There's probably 2 or 3 people in professional bass fishing right now that can say that they can make a living off of tournament winnings.
Yeah, and that's a systemic issue that's within bass fishing in general, whether we're talking bass, FLW back in the day, or MLF. It's just how striking it is to where who's complaining versus who's not based on where they finish consistently. And that to me is like it takes away for some of the argument a little bit. Not all the arguments, mind you, but again, it's like when the whole MLF split happened, and then you had all these people that went over and they came back and they were bitching about MLF, and you look at them like the Brandon Pollocks, the Gerald Swindles, and like, well, they just sucked at every fish counts format. That's what it was, flat out, and they were complaining about it. So Jacob Wheeler's not. And again, like I've said on my show, I think you said on your show, I think Jacob Wheeler's like right now probably the best angler, because whether it's 5 fish, 10 fish on the moon, he's probably going to win. Granted, absolutely, how he practices may or may not be completely within the boundaries, but like you said, Martin did the same thing. He comes from that school.
He was one of my favorites, man. Wheeler was, I enjoyed watching him. And that, when the split happened, me and my buddy were we were split ourselves, because I enjoyed the format when he started. I mean, when you get to sit down and you get to watch a pro go to a place that he's never been to and listen to him when he breaks down, when he's breaking down a river or breaking down why he's going here, why he's going there, is he looking for clear water, dark water, stained water, whatever they're looking for. That was some interesting stuff. Mm-hmm. And that was what I loved about that. But then it kind of just changed. But for me, the Classic every year was almost like a Super Bowl, and I enjoyed watching it. And then once all my favorite guys weren't even in it, you got this forward-facing sonar stuff got me listening to more bass fishing in the last 6 months than I've talked, fished, anything since then. And that's why I wanted to bring guys on. I mean, I haven't really sat down and talked bass fishing, so if I'm a little rusty about it, but
and that's so freaking like, and this is where I feel like the forward-facing sonar thing is kind of like the steroid era in baseball, where you turned on and you saw Barry Bonds with his head 3 times as big as it used to be, and you're like, oh, okay, so everyone's juicing, and if I just get the jab, I'm going to be great, man. I'm going to be bench pressing 400 pounds. I'm going to be dating a hotter model. Everything's going to be great. And in the bass fishing world, I think because they set the schedule the way they are, and you see these guys, it makes you sound like, well, I can't go out there and unless I have a 28-inch graph and I'm just doodling a little minnow in Potomac or the Upper Bay, I can't win. And I've interviewed at least 1 or 2 people on the show that have won some tournaments, and it's a small part of the puzzle, but it's not every tournament at the lower levels that are winning it.
Absolutely. You're 100% correct. So, especially like, on the Upper Bay, I mean, most of our tournaments are won on the flats. The flats
spoilers,
right? The flats it's 10 miles of topped out milfoil. Good luck.
How you guys keep catching them? That's like the Potomac. I mean, I've been there one time when every 100 freaking yards there was a fisherman.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, and
you have to get used to it. And like some people, like I hate it. I hate fishing that way, but you have to do it. Like if you want to compete in any more than a club level tournament, like you very, very, there's most 90% of guys that are going to place top 3 in any sort of open up there are going to be in the grass all day, especially this time of year from now until September. You might be able to find a hard structure bite early, during the spawn, but now you're going to be in the grass, and you just have to live with the fact that there's going to be people out everywhere.
Like late September, October.
Yeah. And
exactly. I'm sorry to interrupt you. You made a very good point when you talked about the schedule, and the scheduling of a lot of these tournaments makes a big difference on whether forward-facing sonar is going to play or not. Take, for example, the Toledo Bend tournament for the Elite Series this year.
Yep.
Dominated by live scope. We 100%. Everybody in the top 10 was sitting out in 50 feet of water live scoping. If that tournament had been a week later, everybody would have been on the bank.
Oh yeah, or Lake Fork in February.
You can't. But when they make the schedule, it's like, okay, well, we want to be here at this time, because this is going to give us the best shot of catching, the big bags, because that's what everybody wants to see. And then, you get a crazy cold front that comes in that throws everything off. And see, Mother Nature is always number one, right? Like you can't compete with Mother Nature. So if you look at heavy hitters last week,
that was cool.
Jordan Lee caught every single fish that he weighed in for 5 days on a frog. Every single one. It was, forward-facing sonar was a non-player in that tournament, which shows a lot, going back to scheduling, where and when you schedule the tournaments will make a very big difference in the amount of impact that forward-facing sonar has.
I 100% agree with you.
But they're saying they're doing it shallow, deep. They're using that. I mean, the one was explained they were pretty much shining it underneath docks.
Oh yeah,
I do it all perspective mode.
I use it. I mean, I use it in forward mode, and in 3 to 4 feet of water on docks.
I know guys using it in 2 feet of water.
I used it a lot on the Potomac this spring in perspective, looking for grass. Never actually seeing fish, but seeing grass that you couldn't see with your eyes, mainly because it wasn't tall enough or it wasn't clear enough. And, catching fish out of grass that was only 8 inches tall in 3 feet of water. So that's a way to use it too.
And to add something to that argument there, and I'm going to throw way back here. When, did you just lose everybody?
You go ahead. You're still there. I'm just really being an ass right now.
If you guys can remember back to the Beijing Olympics, the Beijing Summer Olympics, when Michael Phelps was there, he had on an experimental swimsuit that they made illegal because it made him like 0.3 of a second faster. Yep. But when you watched all the field, he literally lapped Olympic athletes with that 1/10 of an advantage. And what you're seeing right now in fishing is you have the early adopters, because forward-facing sonar is still new. All 3 brands have only had their first gen forward-facing sonar for like 3 or 4 years. So we're still in the early phases of that. And you're seeing this Michael Phelps effect, or the people that understand it, it makes the lead look so much bigger. Yeah. Because you have so many people there that refuse to use it. I think John Cruz even said, like, I just don't have time to fish because I have a business. Well, it's like, well, that sucks to be you, because the 20-year-old kid, he's out there learning it, and you're going to get your butt beat. But I think in 4 or 5 years, when this settles down and you have that crop of everyone's used it, all of a sudden that massive advantage you had disappears.
I think it's less about everybody using it and more about it being such a dominant pattern where everybody, like, you have to, instead of getting that, like 10 years ago, if you had that tournament on Lake Fork, same tournament in February, you would have seen a huge variety of techniques being used instead of it just all being forward facing.
These guys are rolling.
I think that's the biggest thing. It's not necessarily how I feel, but
because they're early adapters. Once all 100 people in the field are good with it, the fish will be pressured equally the same, and then things will change completely.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing.
I mean, look at that. Oh, help me. I think, chat, help me out. I think it was 06 to 08 when Kevin Van Dam basically mortgaged his home on Kentucky Lake with that crankbait, and the ledge bite was hot as hell. And then the crankbait kind of slumped off because everyone started to throw the crankbait, and they started to move around a little bit.
A-rig the same way.
A-rig the same way too. So it's going to go in its ebbs and flows. But I 100% agree. Like, is it an advantage? Yes. If you're going to put it in Kentucky Lake or Lake Fork in February, it's going to be bigger. If you want to put it on the 3 Rivers or Ohio, that would be fun. But like, it's not going to be as effective there. But again, Bass doesn't want to do that because it's not sexy. It doesn't sell. And MLF, they don't, because they want to have 100-pound. They want century belts going out left and right. That's what they want.
Because the average person watching Bass Live, they want to see big fish get caught, not 14 inchers. Who doesn't? I don't want to see 14 inchers getting caught. I want to see 7-pounders getting caught.
Mm-hmm.
But there's, I can tell you firsthand experience, and this is even going back a couple of years on, like you said, the impact of pressure with forward-facing sonar. I was on Conroe down in Texas 2 years ago. For the TBF National Championship. And when we were pre-fishing, if you shined live scope less than 40 feet into a brush pile, you could watch every single bass swim out of it. Like, they would just, as soon as you got under 40 feet, you could just watch them swim out. Because they've been so pressured. So especially those offshore brush pile fish.
The next Maryland Black Bass Advisory meeting, we're going to be going over a study from Texas Fish and Game that they surveyed for a year about forward-facing sonar, and I think it's with over 100,000 participants. And they said the statistical advantage of having forward-facing sonar is between 8 and 10%. That's it, and that's after a year study. Now, what I'm going to ask during that board meeting is, who's your sample size? Because I think that's important. I think if it's Joe Schmo versus the professional, that's where it's at, where we think everyone is going to use that technology like all the guys on the Elite Series, the top 1%ers. They're not. And so even if I gave every single person live scope tomorrow, we went out and did a tournament, there are people that will just flat out suck with it.
Oh, yes, for sure. I have an open invitation for anyone who says catching fish on live scope is not hard to get on my boat, have the front of the boat, and show me how to catch fish on live scope.
Bro, I would get one of those little lunchbox forward-facing sonar units and smoke you off the back of your boat.
You can use the front of my boat.
Oh yeah. Hey, so wait a minute. What do we think of that? What do we think of co-anglers bringing live
that
scope?
Is very interesting
because it's actually a thing. Like, and it's
happening. Genius, honestly. Like
if they bring forward-facing sonar on the back of my boat, I'm fishing in a foot of water all day.
Okay, so that's the next question.
Just throwing that out there.
So that's my question because I have live scope.
I use it. Right?
I'll do it out of spite.
St. Lawrence and like up in like the lakes and shit like
I'm
that.
going
like,
up there in a couple.
Yeah,
weeks.
like nobody. I don't think anybody is.
Doing
that in the GP.
I just fished a tournament on Rayburn, and I was fishing my strengths. I was fishing as a co-angler, fishing my strengths. We were fishing shallow grass, and I got my ass kicked by guys on the back of the boat of people who were using forward-facing sonar. Really? Because they made the most out of what they were given.
Yep.
They sat in the back of the boat and they threw an A-rig the whole day, and they got the right bites. I mean, we had co-anglers in our region. There were 3 7-pounders caught on the second day by co-anglers.
How you
that were just dragging a Carolina rig.
I'm very interested in that. How are you strapping that? How is it sitting on? How are you putting it on somebody's boat? Somebody's got a nice boat, and I mean, is it strapped on? I mean, I don't know how.
It's basically like a sandbag system to hold it there. From the ones that I've seen. So like you just kind of set it over the side and you have a couple little sandbags, or there's like a backpack where you can like hold it. You can hold it with your hand, and cast with the other hand.
I've seen it where they will actually put a battery in like an ammo case or something like that, or like a plastic one.
That's
of those,
awesome.
One of those, and then they'll mount the sonar screen to the top of the ammo case, and then drop
like
the
an ice fishing
transducer. Bring a homemade transducer mount that just tightens to the side of the boat or something.
If you tighten anything on the side of my boat, we're going back to the ramp and we'll sit there all day.
My boat. You touched on something that we need to hit on here is just the death of the co-angler. There are more and more trails going solo.
Yeah, no, that my club, we are exclusively boaters. And it's we're one of the only clubs I know of locally. There's maybe one or two other ones,
but that's not necessarily like when you talk about the death of the co-anglers. You're talking more like the BFLs and things like that, where it's like draw tournaments, and you're seeing
they're struggling to fill the co-angler bits, aren't they?
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think the biggest issue with that is not forward-facing sonar.
Oh yeah, 100%.
It is 100% the angler mentality that's in there. If I'm fishing a draw tournament, even if I'm scoping, I'm going to give my co-angler an opportunity to catch fish sometime throughout the day. The same thing happened with me in Texas. I really appreciated my guy on the second day. He was fishing super shallow points. There were 1 to 2 fish on each one of these clay points. He was always catching the fish because he's casting to him first. Halfway through the day, he said, You still got the Carolina rig rigged up? Yeah. He's like, all right, I'm going to take you over here so you can catch a couple fish. We went to a spot, 15 minutes, popped 2 keepers, and then we went back to doing what he was doing. I mean, I caught in that 15 minutes, I think I caught 13 fish. It's a 14-inch limit down there. They were all bucks, and it is what it is. But I think it's more of the boater mentality of like, it's just about me and you need to sit in the back of the boat and try to learn something. I hate that mentality. I think it's the dumbest mentality that I've ever heard.
It's really bad in the
especially, I understand with the opens, where you're trying to qualify for, the Elite Series. You're trying to become a professional angler. But that mentality is trickled down into like the BFLs. Hey, guess what? You're not qualifying for the elites through the BFLs. Give your co-angler a shot at some fish.
I think it's a multitude of things. And, number one is the economy sucks. Number two, the payouts are terrible. Do you want to pay all the money to be a co-angler at a BFL where now you might win like $100? Okay, 3 opportunities. We all own a boat, and guess what? We've had that one bad co-angler. You pay $50 more, you get to fish a tour without one. You can set up a GoPro in the back. You can get your boat set up the way you want. There's just a convenience there, and we have those options now where 4 or 5 years ago you didn't. And the last one that we don't want to talk about, the kayaking scene.
Yes,
I have made close to $800 this year in kayak tournaments, and I've spent $120 in entry fees. The return on investment is insane on those
the pedal
things.
bikes of the waterway.
my God! The other thing that that you haven't mentioned is COVID.
Yep,
with
the vid. Yep.
Everybody, during COVID, everybody went out and bought a boat.
Yep.
Or a kayak.
I mean, people could not keep a boat or a kayak. Absolutely. I mean, boat dealerships couldn't keep boats in stock.
Yeah.
So you have this massive influx, of people going out and buying boats. That's a lot of your.
They don't want to be co-anglers when they have a boat sitting in their garage.
Right. I mean, I paid, if I paid $70,000 for a new boat, I don't want to fish as a co-angler. I'm trying to get my value out of that purchase that I made. So I think that's 100%. A big player too.
Yeah, it's 100%. I think it's all these factors culminating. And again, I keep getting back to when I think back, even before COVID, there weren't solo tours. That wasn't a thing. And all of a sudden you have CAT doing it. You have ABA doing it. BFL is the last man standing that won't do it. And it's just interesting to me, the market is saying people want this versus anything else. And it's interesting to see where this is going to go in a couple of years, because the BFLs, I 100% think in certain areas, they are withering.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Well, it's like the SQTs in Maryland. Before I started getting into fishing, I heard the SQTs were 100 boats. Now they're down. They're actually doing better this year.
So,
but I remember fishing one that was 18 boats. It was holy crap.
In the early 2000s, when they only had one state qualifier tournament, they didn't have a trail. It was on the Potomac, and there were 213 boats.
That's crazy.
A big difference between that is you'd have to get into the BASS TBF split. Caused a lot of that. The economy in 2007 caused a lot of that. A lot of people got out of bass fishing in that 2007 time frame because it just wasn't affordable. So there's a lot of things that have really caused that grassroots trails to diminish. But the BFLs, it goes back to like you said, your return on investment. Unless you win, or if you get first or second, even as a boater, you get first or second as a BFL, you might make a little bit of money. If you get anything less than second, you're probably just breaking even. If that. Yeah. Especially with how far you have to travel for these trails. We don't have just a local BFL trail. The Northeast BFLs go from the Potomac to the St. Lawrence River.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of travel expenses. Champlain, the BFLs this year, Potomac, St. Lawrence, Champlain, Oneida.
And then just Smith Mountain Lake. So
that's Shenandoah.
Oh, that's not
a Shenandoah division.
Oh, okay.
That's a different one. So
what about the James? Is that a northern one, or is that still
no?
Potomac and Upper Bay are the only ones that are ever in the Northeast.
Okay. Apparently that's Northeast, that should be Mid-Atlantic, honestly, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Right. But they don't have a Mid-Atlantic division. So you lose a lot of. I feel like you lose a lot of participation there. But then when they had a New York only division, they would get 70 boats. And
it's cost again with the economy and everything. And this is I've really started to pay attention to how the kayaking thing has exploded. And I think it's a lot. There's a reason why Yamaha bought Torqeedo. There's a reason why, and I've said this for a couple of years, one of these major boat factories are going to buy Hobie. They're going to buy all these kayak things because they know the writing is on the wall that's the future. You can live in Baltimore or Ashburn in Northern Virginia, and you can put a kayak in your small garage. Where are you going to put a 22-foot Skeeter? And where are you going to drive to take it? Exactly. The Upper Bay, the Potomac, that's it. Well, NVKBA, which is the Northern Virginia trail, you can launch to a lake, any lake, and it's 10 minutes from your house, and all the vents, I think, give out $1,500 to the winner. And sometimes you can double up or triple up. The guy that won, they had a big event on the Potomac River, and there's 4 different clubs going out. You could enter all of them the same time and probably win $6,000. Like, that's insane.
No, the kayak fishing industry has, I mean, it's not my thing. But
it's not
new. Yeah. And
but on the other hand, like I see, like I have a very good friend that fishes kayak tournaments, and like I totally get it, because like your cost. I mean, gas is, I have to put 89 in my boat. It cost me $200 to fill up my boat.
Think about this: the Hobie Trail. Go for it, bud.
There's kayakers everywhere now. It is wild, and everybody wants to get out and they want to fish. I totally understand it, but there is some times where I'm like, I want to go fish somewhere, and I'm like, I want to get away from everybody, and I'll come around a corner, and somehow there's a fucking kayaker sitting there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you and your Torpedo motor, like you would have never been there.
Well, the thing of it is like,
these guys that I talked, a lot of the talk that I've been is with the snakehead guys, and they just did a tournament is their second one, but they were down on Eastern Shore, and the guy won first place and large one. I think he won like, was it like $1,200 or $1,500? He won. And the snakehead tournaments, they got them all down in Virginia. They run to Virginia, they come up here, and they're up at the Susquehanna. They're going to be in Elkton next week, so it's up in Maryland. For me, not only did COVID do it, but the snakehead craze here in Maryland.
You're absolutely right.
A lot of guys buying kayaks.
A lot to do with it.
Think about that. You said he won $1,200. Think about winning. You win one local tournament and you paid for your vehicle that you're fishing out of.
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
I don't know, man. Them things right now are like a setup. So I was just.
Well, yeah.
I mean, when you get into the setup, but like. Like an average decent, pedal drive kayak is $1,200.
Yeah, pay for it.
Yeah, and you can pay for it in a tournament or two. Like that's an insane return on investment.
I think the snakeheads. I really agree with Sam's point. I think the snakehead fishing has blown up kayak fishing recently. I mean, once people realize that like snakeheads are in the gunpowder, like the kayak fishermen were everywhere.
Kayak fishing is very. I mean, I don't kayak fish, but from what I see, it seems like kayak fishing is very oversaturated right
now. Dude, it's pure chaos.
Every tournament has so many people.
Well, and this is the boogie here, and this is what's so like. And I'm lucky; I have a bass boat, and I also have a kayak, and I dabble in both. But I think the snakehead thing, we can definitely talk about that because that's a huge factor of it. The Susquehanna River, you could never hold a bass boat tournament on, really, besides Conowingo. Now, because of kayak fishing, Susquehanna is now on the map to the whole world, and you can win more money probably just poaching the Susquehanna kayak tournaments than you can fishing the Upper Bay bass boat tournaments. There's so many kayak tournaments right now, it's insane.
The upper Susquehanna,
Harrisburg
for sure,
Harrisburg and above that kind of area. Is that what we're talking about?
Yep.
Okay.
If you sign up for a Hobie, you pay the exact same amount for a BFL. But you get to fish 2 whole days, and you will make more money if you win than you would in a BFL, and it pays down farther.
What's first place for one of those Hobie tournaments?
Between $6,000 and $10,000.
Oh God!
Wow. So that's even more than they're making like with the Phoenix
Yep.
money.
Yeah.
So if you have a Phoenix bass boat, you get an additional money in a BFL,
and you fish 2 days.
You're looking at like usually about $5,000, $5,000 to $7,000, depending on if you get the
so does money. Not to derail the conversation, but how long does the Phoenix money last on your boat? How new is your boat?
2-3 years.
So for the BFLs, it's any Phoenix boat.
Really?
As far as I know.
So
I give them credit for that.
But the money from like you have Phoenix First Flight that you have to have an additional. You have to have like a 2-year. Like my Skeeter for Skeeter, their deal is 2 years old. So you can two model years. So like mine's a 2023, so I qualify in 2024, 2025.
So what tournaments around here pay that?
Chester County pays in Skeeter.
Really?
Skeeter, they actually have a lot. Skeeter, Triton, Nitro Ranger, Bass Cat. They have like 6 or 7 this year.
So all you got to do is go get a mortgage for $120,000. and then you got to win so many tournaments within those 2 years, and you're set. Right. It's just interesting because you mentioned about how like kayaks are like, okay, it's oversaturated. No, I just think like we're just seeing the potential of the fishing market now. There was such a barrier to entry for tournament fishing when you needed a boat that was $50,000 to $100,000, and now you're saying go buy a kayak for $4,000 and you can be competitive. And I think that's what we're seeing right now.
Absolutely.
But you'd have to learn a curve too. That, you know, it might sound easy to kayak fish, but let me tell you what, when you throw in wind,
it's hard.
You throw, let me tell you what, man, kayaking, you know, it's still positioning, still positioning everything. And when you're, some guys have trolling motors and stuff like that, but
a whole lot easier to position a bass boat than it is to position a kayak. I mean, I've fished all boats.
I mean,
it's
one of the biggest fish, one of the biggest bass I ever caught in my life was in Deep Creek Lake on the kayak, and I'll never forget that.
I owned a kayak for like a month once.
I found a canoe.
I went out and fished on that thing, and just like okay, first off, it wasn't like a pedal kayak or anything; it was paddle.
Same.
And as soon as I like went out and tried to go around the point at Mariner Point and go back in the channel, and then fish for a few hours and come back out, I was like, I'm never doing this again.
I will say that I've
sold that.
I purchased a kayak when I blew my motor up on my Champion, and I sold it the day after I got my boat back. Boat comes back from the dealer, like threw it on Facebook, sold it the next day. Because I couldn't stand it. I didn't, because I'm so used to fishing out of a boat. Like I didn't like not having that access to areas that I did in a boat.
Or how about the access to 30 different tackle trays and 15 different rods? Like that's a huge thing. For me, that's a huge thing.
I use like 5 baits anyway.
You guys that have fished with me, how many rods? I put almost every rod I have on the deck, and I just pick one up and figure it out. Oh, okay, they're biting this one. Now I'm gonna hold this one.
I mean,
in my hand.
You threw 3 different baits when we were out on the floor.
I had like 15 rods on the deck on Saturday, and like.
Yeah,
essentially the same.
And I basically just use my kayak winnings to fund my boat fishing. That's basically what I do.
Well, for me, kayak to fund the boat fishing.
See, I wanted a kayak.
Look, he's got a Corona. There you go.
Yeah.
Hey Tom, you gotta join us in the Thursday nighters, man. If you can get out there one day, come on.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I can say
set that up.
Where they go out of?
I want to reply to that comment.
Which one?
With the advance in trolling motors, you can get right on top of fish now.
Yeah.
My trolling motor is so quiet. Like I can like in fishing grass, not on bed. If they're on beds, like I've always been able to get on top of them. But
have you been in the water and listened to your trolling motor on like in the water?
Oh yeah.
So your boat.
The fun part about the new trolling motor, it's so quiet that sometimes
you got a brushless?
I feel like it's running. Yeah, I have an Ultra Quest. So
it's nice, but when I heard what YouTube video,
like obviously you're going to hear like the distortion in the water, but it's not going to be any more than a paddle.
It might have even been from back. Now this was back in the day too, when it wasn't as advanced or whatever. But I think it might have actually been Aaron Martin's. Because he was known to get in the water and kind of scuba dive and whatnot. But he said one of the loudest things on his boat was every
Steve
step
Kennedy
you take on the boat just echoes through the water. And the trolling motor, especially like something with spot lock, was the noisiest thing.
Well,
but
now
all the fish are used to hearing.
Now that you have brushless trolling motors, that noise is significantly lower. I mean, you're not hearing the motor at all. You're hearing the disturbance of the water. So it's not much more than if you had to like paddle, to get up close. Every time you stick that paddle in the water, you're making noise too.
It hasn't affected me very much.
It's also just how big the boat, like if you're dealing with a 22-foot Champion versus a 10-foot kayak, the amount of water that you're displacing is completely different. And that's why a lot of guys like fishing aluminum. You're just not displacing as much water and your presence is just decreased.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. 100%.
But to some of the people in chat, no, like I don't like taking the kayaks out like on the Bay or the Potomac. That's more of like I can go fish a smallmouth of it on the Shenandoah River, Susquehanna, Upper Potomac, where I live now, and I can get addicted to that.
Do you take the kayak out on Occoquan?
No, I don't, because I can put my boat there. And if there was a kayak tournament, I would. But if there's not, I'm going to fish out of a boat like you. It's just the tournament thing. It's just the return on investment. There are so many people, like everybody that has a boat probably would finish in the top 50% at least of all kayak tournaments, because you have so many people getting into it that don't have the fishing experience of us boat guys. And it's such a small barrier to entry. It's $50 to sign up for a tournament. And you can make such a return on your investment. That's why Nolan Miner, I think one of the reasons he stopped, and he was a college guy, he fished the Opens, and he was one of the first to say, like, you know what, I'm going to go get a Hobie and slap forward facing sonar on that. And then for like a couple of years, he just like raked everybody. Yeah, he did. Because he was an early adopter. He was like, oh, I can just school people over here. So I'm just going to go do that real quick.
Yeah. And especially like if you own a boat, pre-fishing for a kayak tournament, like you have such an advantage, because I can just take my boat out. I can cover 50 miles of water in a day.
I will say something that stuck with me. It was one of the first podcast interviews I ever did was with Nolan. And he said what he learned when he put forward-facing sonar on a kayak is you don't have the 250, you can't run. You have to pick an area and fish it. And he was like, Tom, I didn't realize how many fish are in a creek.
Yeah.
Until you have something that basically limits. You have that. You don't have that voice anymore saying like, well, why don't we just get on a plane and hop over here? It's like, no, you got to fish.
Absolutely.
And he's right. He is really right.
Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely true. But the advantage of being able to cover all that water when you're like practicing is such a huge deal. I mean, if you have you take somebody who just has a kayak, and like I can go up, because as far as I know, there aren't really any rules against me using a boat to pre-fish, a month before the tournament, to locate on the body of water where I want to fish. I'm like, so I can use my boat, go out, find, okay, this creek is where I need to focus.
Yeah.
Practice comes around for the kayak tournament. That's where that's where I'm focusing now.
And if I'm not mistaken,
a huge advantage.
There's been a lot of there's been a lot of boaters converting into kayaking. Carl Jacobson made a post, but I think Christine Fisher, chat help me out, is the only one that's been pure kayak, homegrown kayak, and making the switch to boating.
Yeah.
I watched the video. That. She's switching over. I know it's definitely a learning curve. Like for me, I mean, real quick.
She gonna be fishing with the guys.
Yeah, I think she's going to fish the Opens.
The Opens.
Okay, well, can I say this quite? Bill Flynn, there isn't a learning curve going from a boat to a kayak. No, there 100% there is, because the first couple of tournaments I lost a lot of money because my setups are all for a boat, like a crankbait setup. The problem is when you have a kayak, it's moving. And so if you have a flimp noodle crankbait rod and 12-pound fluorocarbon and you lean into them on a kayak, everything's scooting forward. You can't take a step back. And so if you have your stuff set up for a boat, a lot of times it doesn't translate to a kayak because it has to be a little bit heavier, because when you set the hook into a 6 or 7 pounder in a kayak, you will scoot forward some and you lose that tension. So you do have to adjust your setups a little bit going from a boat to a kayak.
I noticed that when I had my kayak, when I did a lot of, when I had my kayak, I did a lot of snakehead fishing, just because of, I could launch into gunpowder and go hammer on snakeheads. And like, if I set the hook on a frog, my kayak would move about 2.5 feet.
Yeah.
Like it's insane how much your kayak moves, where your boat is, like, a boat doesn't move. Like when you set the hook, you set the hook, but my kayak would move 2 to 2.5 feet when I set the hook, which, sounds kind of crazy, but I mean, it
does
matches, exactly what you said, where you have to kind of make adjustments to your tackle.
So I have a question for Sam, and I'm going to change the subject a little bit here because my ADHD is kicking off. So you talk about bass fishing on the Eastern Shore. We've talked about doing a shore swing and just making some videos of us fishing the Eastern Shore. But I got to ask you, tell me a little bit about like the Transquakin, Chickamaucomico area. Like, can you run a boat down there? Because it's been on I look at it on maps when I'm bored, like on my lunch break at work.
What do you do, Jason?
And I'm like, dude, I want to fish this, but I don't want to run my boat dry.
Jason doesn't know.
Well, you're going to. I've seen Andy do it. You're going to need a jack plate, but I mean, the chick can pretty much be 1 foot all the way down. It can be 1 foot literally 1.5 foot all the way down, and you got a couple little areas that there's one spot will get down to 11 foot, 6 foot, but basically it's all the way down. Trans is a little deeper, not so much deeper, but it still can get really shallow really quick. Like I said, the trans is a little bit deeper, but the chick can be really, really shallow. If you want to catch snakehead or you want to catch bass, when you get the outgoing tide and everything's kind of out, I mean, down, that's a really good time to go fishing. I do very well. I've done pretty good on the Chick too. As much pressure that place got for snakeheads, I think it was a bad but good thing for me. I always said that we were down there. We used to have a tournament down there at least once or twice a year. And the guys started getting pissed off because we caught one snakehead one year. The next year we started catching 3 and 4, and the guys didn't want to fish there anymore. And then the kayak and the snakehead army came down. And to me, that kind of helped the place. It kind of helped. And the bow fishermen are definitely helping too. But I think it helped kind of even out the snakeheads and the bass to where we weren't seeing so many small fish down there. They keep telling me that it wasn't, but me and my buddy, when you're sitting down there and you're catching 4 and 5 pounders, but you're not really seeing the 1 and 2 pounders, that was really kind of where the guys were just sick and tired of going down there. But I can do pretty well down there, and I love throwing a crankbait down there. It's good, but it's only about 1 foot. It's only about 1 foot all the way down on the Chick.
Wow.
Trans a little bit deeper.
As an Eastern Shore guy, what are these rumors of tarpon moving up into the bay?
You know what? I don't know how far they come up, but I was told by two very good sources that, man, they're tarpon up here. There's tarpon.
I've heard that too. Down toward the mouth of the bay.
It's down south. They didn't tell me exactly where, but he said you can go down there and you can catch yours. Because I said I always wanted to go down to Key West to catch me a tarpon, but he said you ain't got to go down to Key West.
So I've had it on. David Sikorsky runs the Chesapeake Bay Association. Gary Martin that runs the Potomac Aquatic Association too. And they talked about the striped bass issue that's on the bay, and part of it is the warming water. But the other thing that they said is they're seeing more shrimp in the bay than they ever had. Mm-hmm. They're seeing redfish. They're seeing speck trout, and they're saying that they've seen sea bass and tarpon at the mouth. And
it's insane.
What's insane is, will our children not be going to Key West to catch tarpon and snook? Are we going to have pole boats in the bay catching snook and tarpon? Like, I'm sad about the striper, but that's pretty freaking cool too, that there will always be something here, sport fish wise, to catch.
I think we got one of the most diverse, I think Chesapeake Bay has got, it's got everything. I actually had David on. We did a whole thing. It was about the stripers. And one of the big questions that I was asking him, because I have friends that are with the commercial guys, because I go out and do a lot of commercial crabbing and stuff like that with my friend. But they hate David Sikorsky and the TCA. I cannot tell you the disdain for this guy, but I had David on and he talked all about that. And the only thing about the stripers I'll talk about is that they've been doing the same research in the same rivers, the same way. Everything's been the same for the last 50 years. And I think a lot of guys are saying that you need to, because of the blue cats and everything like that, that there should be somewhat either more locations to check, like more in the middle of the bay, because some guys are saying there's plenty of rockfish out there and some of them are saying there's not. So
personal experience, last year, or not last year, but the year before, when they were making such a big deal about the population of rockfish, spawning rockfish, the numbers are so far down. I caught more rockfish in the Bush River that year than I've ever caught in my life. I mean, just hammered them. And like, I don't keep rockfish. I go out, I fish catch and release. But the fall on the Bush was so phenomenal. I mean, even last year. I mean, I went out one day last year, and it took me about a half an hour to figure out what the rockfish were doing. And in 2 hours, I caught 35 in 2 hours. So I hear them saying that the rockfish population is going down, but like, over the last couple of years, I've caught more, and maybe it's because I'm a better fisherman than I was, 5 years ago, but I seem to be catching more rockfish than I ever have.
So it seems like it also has to do with the analytics of the young of the year too. You'll see this on some fisheries where you'll have like the James River right now. I had the heads of the Department of Wildlife Resources on from Virginia talking about this, where you'll have this boom of you're catching all 6-pounders for 3 or 4 years, but then the spawn class behind it sucks. And then all of a sudden, boom, those 4 and 5-pounders are gone because they phased out and you didn't have that next young a year class to come in. And so if I could speculate what like Gary Martin and like Mr. Sikorsky are talking about is like that next generation, like what is that looking like right now? Plus the whole man-hating issue, which I don't know if we want to get into that, but yeah, so that's a fun topic.
I was going to mention that. We can stay off of that topic.
See, that's where when I started this, I was talking, so I was down with the guy with Captain Robert Newberry, stuff like them. They're more for they're the commercial side of it, and they're suing the MFCA or whatever it is. I forgot. They're suing. I mean, they're doing this big giant lawsuit. And they asked me to come down and do the podcast at their meeting. And unfortunately, I couldn't do it that time. But I've been to the Rockfish meeting with all the charter captains and everything. And they're bitching about the 1 fish limit because they're only catching 7% of, the whole, like if there's 2 million rockfish caught, they're only catching about 7% of them. And so it's started to become
I feel like their numbers right now. I feel like their numbers are horribly deflated.
The whole thing. So let me ask you guys something that I enjoyed when we started the John Boat Club, and we wanted to fish. We went to the CPR. We didn't do the put it in a live well thing. We did the CPR like the kayak guys do. Now first tournament met this guy for the first time, and he cheated the first time. The first tournament we just met him, and he freaking cheated, but. I like that. I like the CPR because, especially in the summertime when it's 90, you got 80-degree water temperature and you're bass fishing and you catch them in the morning, you got bass riding around in your boat all day long. I mean, do you guys see any way
how
of that
long
change?
Do you have?
So that's definitely something that we can talk about for hours. Actually, I listened to somebody. I can't remember where it was that I listened to it. Off the top of my head, but for a bass population in a healthy lake, year after year, there's like a 40% natural mortality that needs to occur for it to be a healthy fishery. Mm-hmm. And there are very, very vast differences in numbers in research for what the actual mortality rate is for tournament fish, but you have to have the point I'm trying to make is you have to have some sort of mortality in an ecosystem for it to be successful. Like you can't just catch and release. I mean, you see it in a lot of, it's very easy to see in smaller bodies of water.
There will always be a food chain.
In smaller bodies of water, like you look at a pond, you can see it, it's exponentially worse in a pond. If the population of bass gets too big in a pond, food sources run out and it goes down. Is that going to happen in the upper bay? Probably not.
Yeah. So this has come up a bunch with the new regulation that Maryland's trying to put out there in 2025.
What new regulation?
We're talking about what we're going to do with catchway release, catch photo release for people that are new to this, that are listening right now, because there's a big push for this. Spoilers, Boyd Duckett was right. I know people hate to say that, but the idea of catch photo release is a thing. Or catchway release too. It's going to become more and more a thing, but this is my issue is it's a slippery slope. And and this is the data, and we'll be going over this here in July when the quarter meets, and we'll have the scientists come in and show us the data. But anyway, so why are you doing catch photo release or catchway release? Okay, so it's to stop mortality. Great. So what is the end goal? Because if it is to get it to zero, that means just ban fishing. Like Pennsylvania has basically done, just ban tournaments. Is the goal to just minimize it as much as possible? Because as soon as you make it just a very vague thing, what Pennsylvania did is they went like, okay, listen, guys, we just want to just block the spawn off just April to June. Okay. It's like, okay, no problem. Don't do that. Hey, it's too warm in the summertime. So let's just go from June to September. Boom. Now half your year, you're not allowed to fish for a bass because it's either the spawn or it's too hot. And I think there's validity to catchway release or catch photo release, but when are they going to start saying like there's more mortality fishing to spawn, or it's just too hot, you shouldn't catch them at all? And that's where I get a little nervous about all this stuff.
So
I mean, we talked about that on our show together.
Yeah,
and, probably.
In my opinion, and sorry, I couldn't make that show. I can't remember. I think I was in Texas.
You were in Texas,
but I will say.
Let me ask you something. You're Tony, right? Are you Tony?
I'm Paul.
Paul, are you professional, or you just do it because you just don't have nothing else to do?
I love tournament fishing.
What? It's just like
bad,
all over the country.
It's just a bad, expensive hobby.
It is.
Are you married?
I am.
Are you married?
I am.
So that's impressive.
I have an amazing wife that supports everything that I do.
Bless her soul.
And allows me to travel all over the country. And
this is the only hobby that's cheap. This is the only hobby that's more expensive than drugs.
I mean, drugs aren't really a hobby.
No, it's an addiction.
They started.
Also, I don't think I can quit bass fishing either. So,
so it's an addiction.
Real quick, I'm gonna. So after this live stream, so being a YouTuber and doing long form content, I have access to a couple bigger YouTubers, and I've had a big discussion with them for me because I have seen a different. The views went in about a year, so I'm not doing the shorts anymore. I think they hurt my channel, and I think these podcasts are hurting the long form. So starting next week, I'm still going to be on my Facebook page, still going to be on the Outdoors of Maryland Facebook page. But when it comes to YouTube, we're going to switch it from this Outdoors of Maryland to Outdoors of Maryland podcast. So it's not going to be on this channel; it's going to be on the other channel, just because I think I'm gonna start pounding out some long form, and I'm thinking it's hurting the live streams because I started this in December, but the shorts I think screwed it up. So I want everybody to know that I'm going to be switching over to the Outdoors of Maryland podcast channel on YouTube. That'll be a slow growing thing, but I want to concentrate a little bit more on this channel on my long form content because we're going to make a video. We're doing our crabbing. We're doing a crabbing video. That's one of my big thing on my channel is doing our blue crabbing.
So that's actually how I saw your channel the first time, is watching crabbing videos, and I was all about it because I don't know if you saw my shirt. I'm into the same type of music you are, and I was like, oh my god, there's metal and crabbing. That's what I'm talking about. I need to go out with this guy. I'm
freaking old school. They got a good. We'll talk a little music real quick. Couple good albums right now is Sebastian Bach from Skid Row has actually got a pretty good album out. It's Sebastian Bach, but it's still a pretty good album. Judas Priest got a new album out. That's kind of the same thing, but it's a little heavier. But we can talk that. We want to talk fiction. We start getting into music, right?
I'm more into the Mozart.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Sebastian Bach.
Yes. That was Johann.
That's a different Sebastian.
Johann Sebastian Bach.
Yes.
So do me a favor, if you guys can just explain your channel and let them know when you're coming on, when you normally come on. For everybody, probably should have did a little bit earlier as I started rambling. But how about you, Thomas? Why don't you explain to everybody about your channel and your, what you're doing with it? What's the normal time you come on? Do you just put them out regularly, or is it just certain times you really go out and put them up?
You want me to go for it? Yeah. So fishing the D.M.V, anything that has to do with people that live in D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, mostly fresh water, but I do have on the heads of state for Maryland and Virginia and the Chesapeake Bay Association to give us sit reps on how the bay is doing. Usually I'm pumping out 3 to 4 episodes per week, plus Monday night live every Monday night, where we give away about $200 worth of prizes. That's usually at 7 to 8 o'clock at night that we start with that. That's kind of my channel, and I try to mix it up and bounce across, so I'm not doing the Potomac River 36 times in a row because people think that can get stale. But the problem is that's what you could probably do this time of year with how many tournaments that are kind of on that river right now.
Go ahead, gentlemen. Go ahead, Chad.
Bass and Beer Radio, man. We've been around for, I think it's been about 2.5 years now. And we go live every single Friday night at 8 p.m. We cover and we talk about a lot of the local tournaments and derbies that go on around here, as well as cover some of the MLF stuff and some of the elite stuff. And we also just normal shenanigans after we kind of cover those things, wherever wherever the wind blows, and we just kind of have fun with it. And we're on Facebook and we're on YouTube. We definitely need to focus a little bit more on the YouTube side of things.
Put it in the chat. Put it in the chat. Somebody was typing in there. Type your YouTube channel into the chat.
Go ahead.
It's Bass and Beer Radio on YouTube.
But yeah, we kind of just got started. I mean, our first ever podcast was Chad's phone sitting up on a book. And we were just sitting there bullshitting, talking into it.
Just like
it actually died about 20 minutes into the podcast, and then we put it on a charger and we did it again. But like we had a bunch of people were commenting, and we're like, "Well, this is fun. This is cool." And then we ended, within a year, we had Denny Brower on the show, David Fritz,
Logan Parks.
Logan Parks was our
first guest. Yeah.
Yep. Mike Buca from Bullshad Swim Baits.
Matt Heron.
Matt Heron's been on the show a couple of times.
Matt Downs from Trick Tins. Keith Carsons.
Andy Hauser from Team Marine.
Tom from Fishing the D.M.V.
Hello.
Now Sam too. We've had a lot of really awesome people with awesome podcasts and/or fishing backgrounds come on the show, and we fully intend. Honestly, I kind of like gearing our show more towards interacting with pros. I love when we do have the opportunity to interact with professionals. I think that's something that's really, really cool, and you get a different perspective from guys that are all through the elite or the MLF scene.
Yeah, guys that have fished all levels, and that's a lot of our content is focused around tournament fishing, whether it be local or national, and being able to have perspectives from these guys that have fished literally all levels of tournaments, it really adds a lot of value.
Your mics sound really good, by the way.
Yeah. Because usually at first they have difficulties. I go up there, damn, the difficulties. Even the mic's not coming on. It's kind of.
We have a hard time with this stuff, but we've been good the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's been good the last couple of weeks. I don't know, I have no idea if OBS and Rode had an update and they just clashed and it wasn't working, or what was going on, man. But we didn't get rid of OBS like normally, but we went to a Streamlabs OBS and did a few things, and it's been so much more smooth. So we're looking forward to continuing what we're doing. And the Streamlabs that we're using, we're on StreamYards now, which is an awesome platform.
Well done.
I've really thought about the StreamYards, but we're on Streamlabs, and Streamlabs is very interactive, man. They have a lot of different widgets you can use. One of the widgets that I really like is they have a spin the wheel widget, so you can put different topics in it and just spin the wheel. And then it'll either land on, that we talk about this topic, we talk about this angler, and/or, hey, we have a giveaway going on. These are the people that entered into the giveaway. You won the shirt. Or
Chad is very easily amused.
I am very easily amused.
So you're doing StreamYard?
Streamlabs.
Streamlabs. Okay. Because I've stuck with StreamYards because I think it's very old man friendly, and as you can see, I'm switching around. I was going to go to OBS. I was going to try OBS, but to me, I don't know. I just got so used to doing this, and I can set some stuff up. It's not as much as putting layers on top. There's other better things you can do with the OBS and stuff, but really,
OBS is definitely a little bit more user intense.
Mm-hmm.
It's not very user friendly.
It's not very user friendly, but when you get used to it and you get all your plugins the way you want, you can have a very, very fun show with OBS, where I found that I thought StreamYards and Restream slightly limited things. I don't think you can do spin the wheels and games and yada, yada, yada.
No, I can do giveaways and everything on here.
Okay. So yeah, I need to look more into StreamYards, but the Streamlabs is what we're doing. And that's been pretty cool. I just like interactive stuff. Stuff that kind of draws people in, makes people talk a little bit.
I want to get to Jerry's comment for a second, because Jerry messaged us, and we haven't forgotten about you, Jerry.
We would love to have you on.
We definitely want to have you on. We'll reach back out to you and make that happen. Because Jerry's a captain in the local high school Bassmaster scene, which is pretty cool. So definitely want to have him on. And I'm not going to tell you where. If you look at his profile picture, that's one of the biggest smallmouth you've ever seen come out of Conowingo, by the way.
5-pounder.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. I dream about that.
I've never caught a 5-pound smallmouth out of Conowingo.
That place is so cool.
Oh, it's my favorite fishery ever.
I fished up there a couple times, right above the dam, with the bass and bunch. I think I was up there twice. I got to fish more up there, and it was good. It was good because I got to go with guys, because I was just a beginner when it come to tournament fishing, and I found it to be fun. Unfortunately, the one day I had a tournament one day, and I swear it was a big spinnerbait day, and I was throwing a big spinnerbait, and by the end of the day, my wrist hurts. I mean, my wrist hurts so bad. I was throwing a double arm. It doesn't matter. They wouldn't take the small spinnerbait. They were only taking the big one with the big blades, and that really kind of kicked my ass by the end of the day.
That's a fun bite up there.
Yeah, I just interviewed the MAKBF winner up there for their big kayak event, and they said they had more fish that were registered in that tournament than on the Potomac River and the Chesapeake Bay.
Is that the same?
That's not that doesn't sound unbelievable to me.
Is that the same series that Jason was in?
I don't remember.
Our buddy Jason was just got second place in the Maryland kayak
something or another. It was on Rocky Gorge,
something like that. Yeah, on Rocky Gorge.
Yeah, that's a different group, but yeah, Rocky Gorge is interesting. That's an interesting lake too.
I've never fished Rocky Gorge.
We gotta get Jason back here on the show to come in here and talk about the kayak fishing out there and that scene. He would definitely come back and talk on the show, so that would be interesting.
But yeah, Conowingo has such a diverse. The reason I like it so much is because
there's just so many fish there.
There's a lot of fish, and there's something for everybody. If you want to go up there and fish grass, you can do that. If you want to go up there and fish wood, you can do that. If you want to go up there and live scope all day, you can do that. If you want to
you can fish ledges, you can fish. I mean,
you can take a jet boat as far up as you can go. Like it does.
It really
have
sets
everything.
Up. It's funny. It kind of sets up a lot like a Tennessee River lake.
Yes. The first time when I fished Kentucky Lake in the FLW, as soon as I got out there, I was like, this is literally like Conowingo.
Yeah.
Except this has 28 pounds of fish in it.
I personally think it's
a lot bigger.
Yeah.
I think it's the most dangerous fishing in Maryland, to put it in one way. If you don't know what you're doing out there, it's a dangerous place to fish when you're running a boat.
It's not any more dangerous than fishing the Upper Bay. Like,
I don't know.
If you're running, if you're running up into the rocks.
There's got to be somewhere in Maryland that gets the title of one of the most dangerous places to fish, and Upper or Lower Conowingo is getting my chip in that hat.
I mean, anywhere near downtown Baltimore.
Yeah, right. That's
okay. All right.
Different reasons.
I'm thinking about like drowning, more of like getting shot offshore.
I have a question. Now that we're talking about different fisheries,
we're banned.
Dangerous is in? Hold on. Sorry. Do you mean dangerous is in like rough water? Dangerous is in
Fallujah?
In hitting stuff, or what?
It's never actually happened, but I know of stories like down Lower Conowingo. I know Jason will be down. I know like stories down like Lower Conowingo when guys would have their boats and they anchor up and they're out there fishing for rockfish or whatever, and then all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but they're scheduling for this, but they'll open up the gates and then the tide rises really, really quick. These guys can't get their anchor up. It drags the front end of the boat.
I was talking about Conowingo.
I mean, I'm talking about Susquehanna either or up above Conowingo or down below. I think that Susquehanna River gets the title of most dangerous fishery in Maryland. If you're not paying attention to what is going on, things can go bad very, very quickly. And that goes for kayakers as well. How many times, God rest the people and take care of them and everything, but how many kayakers have we seen that have had issues?
Anything from Rock Run north can be really Rock Run to the dam can be super dangerous.
Yeah, it's you got to know your shit. You got to pay attention to what's going on around you. No doubt about it. Don't go out there and think that you're Superman, because it ain't gonna happen.
I messed the propeller up brand new. Just put a brand new prop on and was down at Lepium or whatever. Lapinum was there, and I'm just idling, no gas, just going real, real slow back to the ramp, and bang.
There's
what even? I mean, just as bad as no gas, just idle.
You got to know where that island is.
Holy hell!
There's a right near the just south of the ramp. There's an old island there. It actually used to be out of the water. It's not out of the water anymore. But it's on a normal water level. It's about this far below the surface.
And it's very hard. Lots of rocks.
Yeah, it's covered in just like big chunk rock.
But next week I'm going to be having on Jennifer Muse. She is a kayak bass fisherman. She does tournaments and stuff. We just had some. I'm looking for Stephanie to come on, and June's coming. So I think we're going to have Christine. If we can get her away from her stuff, I think I got Christine Fisher maybe coming on. We had talked back and forth, but she was so busy at the beginning of spring. It's crazy. And I don't think she slowed down too much, especially with her, her learning the boat and everything. But we might have her on. So we're crossing the fingers to have her on, because I've been watching her YouTube channel, since last spring. So I watched all of her tournament season last year and the beginning of this year. So I think she's a really badass fisherman. She is no smoke and mirrors. I think the girl can fish. But next week we're going to have Jennifer Muse on. I don't know where she's from, because I just seen her on another podcast. But she's got a lot of sponsors, and she looks like she tours doing bass fishing. So it's going to be fun. I'm really trying to promote the women, because I think the women have a window of opportunity right now with everything that's going on with the men and the MLF and the bass and all the hoopla going on. I think the women, like Bass. I think Bass is promoting Christine. So I think the sponsorships will really go towards the women right now. That's my opinion. I think they're just having a window right now that's opening up for them to really promote, women in the bass fishing. So I'm going to try to talk to them as much as possible. And that's going to be next week, Tuesday, 7 p.m. So far, that's what we got agreed on. So it should be really fun. You guys, I appreciate you coming on. I mean, this was hopefully a little promotion for your channels, and with you guys, hopefully a little promotion for my channel. Usually I'm a little bit more organized. Today I just kind of been blabbing, but other than that, I had fun, and listening to you guys all the time, I learn a lot.
Sometimes those are the best shows, man.
I have a question. You said Stephanie. Is that Stephanie from MPFL? Stephanie,
blonde.
H. I can't pronounce her last name. Hyphenated last name.
So, yeah, I had her on her one.
Stephanie HB. She's a hammer.
Hemphill. Stephanie Hemphill.
Yeah, she fishes the MPFL. She is an absolute hammer.
Yeah, she's one that I've been talking to. I contacted her, and she said she's going to come on. Just haven't got the date down yet. But
great
having her, so it's kind of just promoting the women. I just think you heard my spiel. I just think right now, when you're talking about sponsors and everything, in a way to grow bass fishing, whether it be in a kayak, like Jen is in a kayak, Christine's definitely in a kayak, but she's in a boat. I had on Cindy Adler last week. She's with the LBAA. She's a professional tournament more down like south and everything.
Yep.
Out of Arkansas. I think it's Arkansas she's out of. I think it's Arkansas. We had her on last week, and I think we're actually going to have a group of them come on and actually talk about it and everything. I think she's really good too. I've been watching her videos. She's got a YouTube channel. And I think these girls got an opportunity to really start picking up some of the sponsors that might not be so happy with all the stuff going on in the men's world, if you understand what I mean.
For sure. And it opens up. I mean, that's a new market for them too. So
it'll help grow the bass fishing, I think.
Exactly. It makes perfect sense that they would, kind of direct their resources toward, the female anglers, because the male fishing market is a little that's pretty oversaturated.
It's not just a disarray. It's a little bit of a disarray. I mean, I don't know. I think ever since the split, I haven't watched the Bassmaster Classic. I think this year, because I'm glad, because Christy is one of my favorite. Christy and Hackney, they were like all my favorites that I like to watch a lot. And when they weren't in the Classic, it just didn't seem the same. So I haven't been watching it. But some of them guys back, and I
think the split was actually good. Because for me,
100%.
like it made me, it gave me new favorites.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Seth Fighters. He's good. I love Seth Fighter.
Yeah, he's good.
Lee Livesey, those guys. Like I love watching those guys, and it kind of gave me the opportunity to watch those guys, and then I could see I could still follow KVD on on MLF. So I think it was actually a good thing for both organizations, but
there's always going to be two, whether it was Bass or FLW, Bass, MLF. There's always going to be two, and we always get this part of the history just washed away. Bass created MLF. They created this evil. So we don't hear that. It's just Boyd Duckett's bad, which, trust me, I have a list of things I think he did wrong, but Bass hasn't really changed at all. It's just they say, look at this dumpster fire more than us. There was that one individual who got caught cheating in a tournament where he was using his trolling motor to blow over a spawning bed, and that just disappeared. Like we're not going to talk about that.
Brian,
that went away.
That was Brian New. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Brian New.
And that to me, it's like where that story won't get any traction, but like the Watson thing will. It's like, well, one is off the field antics. The other is like if the Houston Astros would like figure out a way to like figure out signs from a pitcher to win a World Series. One's worse than the other.
That's been talked about a ton on various podcasts. That
more now.
It doesn't matter. More now. It doesn't matter what. It doesn't matter what organization it is. They don't want to, like, they're so worried about their image that they don't want to focus on anything bad that happens, even though they did the right thing, and it would look. In my opinion, it would look better for them to say, to bring it out and publicize it. Hey, this is what happened. We took care of the situation. It gives if they would bring it out and talk about it, it would give more legitimacy to
there would be,
in my opinion.
But the problem is there is a cult of personality around Bass that's not around MLF. Boyd Duckett could come out tomorrow and cure cancer and all the problems in the Middle East, and people would still be throwing a shit ton of shade on the comment section. Bass could probably kill someone and get away with it.
That's because Boyd Duckett's an asshole.
No, but I'm just saying, like, I'm not disagreeing with that, but it's been bred into people that MLF can't do anything right and Bass can do no wrong. Just look at the comment section. And if you had the same scrutiny equally across MLF and Bass, it would make things better, because I think things would improve with Bass. The whole reason you had this initial blow up was people started bitching and Bass said no, and people said, then we're leaving. Bye.
Absolutely.
So I don't know. It
was a good format when they first left. They kind of ruined it. I'd like to
the original MLF Cup format was the best format in ever.
I don't like the team. I don't like
professional fishing.
The stuff they got, the team stuff going on. I'm not into that.
Well, no. And always remember this: who owns a majority share is Johnny Morris, and he owns a majority share in MLF. If he wanted Boyd and everyone else,
that's Jim Wilburn, actually.
All right. Whitewater.
White River.
White River. I've had way too many Coronas. The point is, with their controlling stake, it's like Roger Goodell in football. If the owners wanted him gone, they could. They have the ability to have levers. They want him there, I think, because it's the slings and arrows. Because as soon as they're gone, who are you pointing their finger at? Right. And that's why Goodell is there, and he's brilliant. It's like, pay me a ton of money and I'll take all the crap for you. So I think in that dynamic, that's what's going on with MLF. But they know this one simple fact: we're just going to outlast Bass, because Maryland, Tennessee, and all these states are going to be saying, you know what? I don't think weigh-ins are good for the ecosystem. Maybe we should do catch, weigh, release. Guess who's going to have about 5 to 6 years of experience on that? Yeah, it'll be them.
Yeah, I don't.
Well, they go back to.
I'm not a big catch, weigh, release fan.
I'm not, and that's where I'm like, I'm mixed. I think if you want the perfect thing for the ecosystem, it's probably what Texas does, which is like you can put a couple in the live well, weigh the rest of them. That's probably the best kumbaya thing. But if you were a betting man in the stock market, you could see, like, if they pass laws to limit weigh-ins, MLF clearly just wins. Like, so,
Agreed. And here's my issue. Here is my biggest issue with that. If they're going to they will make laws specifically against tournament anglers, but I can go out on any day of the week and throw 5 fish in my live well and take them home and fry them.
You're preaching to the choir. I mean,
why does that make any sense?
Again,
why are you limiting the guys who are putting the fish back, and you're making all of these laws or regulations against tournament anglers who are catching and releasing. We're putting fish back. Yeah, a few of them might die. But hey, guess what? You have a 5 fish limit for anybody else in the state, and all of those fish die.
But the other thing you have to think about is just the technology thing. Like I think we mentioned earlier in the show, someone did about with the catch photo release. The technology is getting so good, like with the events that you do for like the Hobies, the AI can tell if it's the same fish or not now. It can literally check the scale patterns and be like, you just entered the same fish twice. It's going to get to the point where I think you could put on a catchway release tournament and it's cheaper than having them all bring them all in, just when it comes to everything that you have to lug around. And there's been a bunch of people that have become millionaires just doing tournament organizations online. Shane Flynn Outdoors, he runs a national online tournament right now, and he was one of the first to do it. And it's a thing, it's a niche. And again, I don't know. I just feel like catchway release is coming whether we like it or not. It's just how big of a market share it's going to take from weigh-in tournaments, honestly.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
I'm gonna leave you guys with one thing to think about when we call this. I got it in my head, and I think we need to ban hydro waves.
Why?
Hydro waves.
I'm just kidding. It's kind of a joke banning stuff. Hydro wave. I couldn't believe that's what. This is how old school I was when I was sitting there watching one of these tournaments, and they were explaining what a hydro wave was. I said, "What the F is a hydro wave?" I had no idea. And then told the person, "Well, these guys are professionals. Why are they trying to fake fit?" It's the same thing with the 4 piece of sonar.
So I have not put a hydro wave on my new boat. I had a hydro wave on my old boat, and I've had a few. I won't say that it's not like it works all the time every time, but I've had a couple of situations where I think it absolutely made the difference between me winning a tournament and not.
Yeah, that's all. I was kind of really just I was going to leave you hanging with that one, so I thought it'd be. I just think the technology thing's fun because look, we got a little TV. We all got TV.
Yeah, let's ban glide baits.
Wow.
Shut up, John.
We'll ban glide baits. That way, Chad will actually have to learn how to fish something else.
Oh dear.
I'm
a dominant force with the glide bait.
I love you, buddy.
I mean, that has really been a big. I hate to keep going on like this, but. With the glide baits,
we talk for 2 or 3 hours sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, this is lightweight,
man. My buddy spent like 125 hours on one of them. I'm like,
that's cheap.
I know. I'm like, man, I'm not spending that much money on a bait. My wife divorced me.
Hinkle shads are going for like
you gotta ship it to where you gotta ship it to where you work. You can't ship it to home. You gotta learn these
What was the rumor in that tournament Milliken won? He lost like, was it $10,000 worth of Hinkles? Like fishing over that brush, like there was some crazy rumor about like all the baits he snagged and broke off in that win.
I know that he snagged and lost maybe like 1 or 2 Hinkles or something like that. But
I mean, Hinkles are 1,000. They go for like $1,000 to $2,000.
Anywhere from 1,000 to somewhat depending on what coloration, the age.
So $2 to $3 grand.
Yeah, you're looking. I mean, for the average, I would say probably like $1,000, $1,200.
2 baits, $2 to $3 grand.
A Hinkle shad. The trout is bringing a different price as well.
I could not have the stones to do that. Oh my god! Could you imagine just snapping off and retying?
Like, don't get me wrong. Like,
no, not at all.
Not trying to like be that guy. Like, I do throw some $200+ glide baits, but dude, I'm not getting into that. That's crazy.
The problem is a lot of them they do work better. I mean, I got.
Dude.
What's he gonna pull out?
Here's a 12-inch. This is from Fish Everything. This is their 12-inch.
I need to get that. I really want to get a couple 10 inches.
That's a new one.
A 10 and a 7.
And it's caught a 35-pound bag out of the res this spring. Like,
really,
they freaking work.
Dude, they absolutely work. And one of the things that I haven't ventured into that I really want to venture into is I'm throwing 6 and I'm throwing 7-inch glide baits. I haven't threw true 10 and 12-inch glide baits. And that's something that I just want to do for the experimentation factor of it. I want to go back to the GP and see if I can mimic the same thing with a bait that is just that big as well.
And it's not like you don't have them. I mean, I know you have a depth 250. That's 10 inches.
Yeah, I have some big baits, but honestly, like
you have that black talon that's 9 inches.
I mean, I'll speak on fish everything for just a second here. I've had my indifferences with Victor in the past. Victor's been doing really, really well for himself. I'm happy for him, and I'm definitely interested in trying some of his glide baits around here. I think they're really nice baits. So,
sounds like you got some drama.
As long as you,
teenage drama.
As long
time ago. Drama.
As long as you get your bait after you pay for it, then it's all good.
Are you surprised?
Well, that was kind of like a test that I did with summertime. Everybody talks about it gets hot, it's been beat up, go small. And man, I went out and I was like, nope. I threw on like a big giant 10-inch freaking Zoom worm, and my buddy goes, "What are you going to do with that thing?" Man, I yanked him out of a tree with that damn thing. I was
You'd be absolutely surprised some of the days where I'm going out and you're throwing a jig, you're throwing even like a Ned rig or a spinnerbait, something like that, and nothing is happening. And then you can toss a 7 or 8 inch glide bait in the water, and all of a sudden you'll start seeing follows.
I think he's saying you can't handle 12 inches.
You can't handle the 12-incher.
Probably not. I think I'm more looking to get into that 9 to 10 inch range.
A little more average.
But,
see how it feels.
I gotta say, it's not so much the length; it's more the girth that you gotta watch out for.
Yeah, those hinkle shads are.
That's what I'm saying.
Damn, honey, you're talking like you. I'm sorry.
I mean the fish up. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a bigger. I mean, sometimes I throw bigger baits. Then I don't go finessey in the summertime if I don't have to. I mean, I'm throwing a big jig. I'm throwing like you said, like a 10-inch worm. Like I throw a 10-inch worm all the time in the summertime.
He's like, especially just go there,
especially immediately post spawn. But I kind of am on the same wavelength as you. Like I'll go the opposite because
everybody's throwing every it's like everybody. I don't know. Everybody's got the same mentality sometimes when it comes to that, and thinking a little bit outside the box. I think helps when it comes to bass fishing. And you guys have really got me back into talking bass fishing. Sometimes you guys are way more knowledgeable than I am, even though I've been doing it probably a little bit longer. I don't know if you guys are any of you guys even near 50 years old yet. 40.
I'm the oldest one. I'm 40.
I'm almost halfway
it's
there.
Not even. So the way that I kind of look at the big
see all the
bait thing is
I got plenty of gray in this beard.
I have so much gray. It'll make me take my hat off. I don't have a hat on. There is so much, in my opinion, with the swim bait thing where I like throwing it because it's a presentation that isn't thrown in front of a fish's face every single day. Now it's becoming more prevalent because the swim bait scene is taking off, but if you go up to Conowingo, the amount of bass that have had a 7-inch glide bait thrown in front of their face is a lot smaller than the amount of bass that have had a Ned rig or a chatterbait come swimming across them.
It's another tool in the box.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's another tool in the box.
It's not going to be the first thing that I pull out, but it's still there.
It is dependent on the body of water that you're at. The primary forage, like Occoquan Reservoir, are 15-inch gizzard shad.
Right.
And if you're not throwing a 7-inch Kitech or above in the spring, you literally won't cash a check or even sniff, any decent weight. And you'll see guys throw a 12-inch, 10-inch glide bait, and they're catching non-keepers because that's what they're keyed into. And so, it really depends on the body of water that you're going at and how many big fish are actually there that are willing to take a swipe at it.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yep.
I've said that to Chad a few times. He doesn't believe me.
I don't know anything about swimming.
if you want, what do you want to call you, Tony?
I'm Paul.
Yeah, August 7th. It's a Wednesday. From 8 to 4, the club down here on the Chop Tank River. You want to fish it with me?
Is that the Wednesday only?
Yeah,
I believe I actually I know quite a few people that fish that. I know a lot of the Delaware guys. I believe I have that schedule.
Yeah,
let me take a look here.
8-7. Andy that runs it, he's up here. I haven't fished.
Yeah, it's
with
Andy.
him
Andy Kent runs it, right?
Yeah, I haven't fished with him in probably 3 years. But this year I'm going to fish a couple tournaments, and Chop Tank's one of my favorite.
Yep.
Where are they put
my buddy,
in?
one of my friends, Butch, gave me the schedule when we were down in the Potomac about a month ago. So there were a couple that I was thinking about fishing. It's a haul down there.
Where do you guys put in?
Oh yeah, yeah, right there on the other side. We usually go right at Martineck, but it's on the other side at the
Are they watching the yacht club?
It's a boat club or marina
club. The yacht club right there in Denton.
Yeah.
Are they doing the yacht club or are they doing the public launch?
Yacht club. It's at the yacht club.
Well, one of them you got to have like a pass to park there. Or
yeah,
whatever.
that's the Denton public ramp. That's right by the bridge.
Yeah, it's
the yacht club is directly across the river from that.
That's where we always launched, was at the Denton public one.
The one, you mean downtown? Yeah. Usually I'll go to Martineck. Usually I'll launch off down Martineck, and right there it's like $5 to launch off.
Man, I enjoyed fishing the Chop Tank. I've only fished it once, but I did enjoy fishing it. But I tell you what, I know a couple old guys in this area that I talked to, and they said back in the day that place used to be good, and guys like real good, and guys would run a lot farther south than Tuckahoe and catch really big fish. So
depends on time of year.
I'm curious if that's still a thing, because nowadays nobody fishes
north.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. Nowadays nobody fishes south of Tuckahoe, but back in the day they used to. Like
Greensboro area is always good. A lot of tournaments are won up in Greensboro area. Oh, it depends on the time of year though. I mean,
I'll probably depending. I usually went up north a little bit more, but I've been spending a little bit more time down. I don't know how. I don't think I'm that far from the Tuckahoe Creek that comes into the Chop Tank. But I usually go down from Martineck. I usually go downriver.
Yeah,
and fish.
I've fished quite a bit of the Chop Tank, so pretty.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's good. I mean, I live 5 minutes, so it won't be that much of a ride for me.
How is the Wimico fishing in Salisbury?
Wimico?
I know they had I know they had some disease issues there a couple years ago.
I haven't fished it in, like I said, that's out of Salisbury, so I haven't fished that one. It's been probably 2 years since I fished that one. I didn't too bad. I do a little bit better right out of Sharptown on the Nanticoke.
I like the Nanticoke a lot. That's a fun place to fish.
Yeah, Nanticoke. That one's been pretty good. I've done pretty good up in Broad Creek, but a lot of people go up there. It was funny. Me and my buddy Dave. He's got a bass boat now, but we went and fished that a couple years ago, and he had a 16-foot with a 25 horsepower on the back of it, and all the other guys had their big giant glass boats, and we went and we fished one creek that we can go really far up in that none of them boats would get into, but we ended up going up in Broad Creek. We had to leave 45 minutes because it took us that long to get back to the ramp.
Well, plus you have those like 3 6-mile-an-hour zones in Broad Creek.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
But wow. we won that tournament that day. We won.
Yeah, I've done that. I've fished pretty far up into Broad Creek. I've also fished. I mean, I've fished in a lot of creeks down there.
You fish all over the place, man.
I do fish 4 days a week. So,
are you retired? You're in the Army, right?
No, that's Tony. Tony's in the Army.
That's me.
Okay. I work for University of Maryland.
Okay, so you work at home.
I do. So I get off at 3:00 and I'm on the water at 3:15.
Nice.
Damn.
Yeah.
I live a mile and a half from the ramp on the Gunpowder.
Yeah. So what's your favorite place on the Gunpowder? Mine was always Seneca, but the Snakeheads got up in there pretty
good. The Gunpowder. Like that's like inside in the Joptown area. That would be my favorite place.
They just had that right out of Mariner. Yep. Yeah, I usually fished right out of Dundee. Was actually really good, and I fished Mariner. I always liked going up into the little pool up there, the little pond.
Back in the quarry.
Yeah, back in the quarry. That was kind of our that long stretch right there was always fun, man. We used to catch some nice fish. Just going up to the quarry was fun fishing.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I actually bought my house in Joppa because that is my favorite river to fish.
Well,
that was a big reasoning that I bought a house there.
My grandson lives right. I wish I lived on the other side sometimes because my grandson's up there and I would be able to spend more time taking him out fishing. But I get him a couple times during a year, and I took him topwater fishing for the first time last year. He didn't. It was weird. The week before I went out, this place pretty much has all lily pads, but on this one little stretch, it's all wood. You know where Smithville is, since you fish all the time.
Yes, ish.
Yeah. So it's a little lake that runs down into Marshy Hope, and the week before I went in there, man, I was smashing him on a Zoom horny toad, and I gave him a popper to go pop there. We didn't catch nothing, not even a hit on topwater. And then I went up there on the wood and I started throwing a crankbait, and then he's only 11, and he wanted to throw a crankbait, and I was like, you're going to get stuck. But now he did awesome, man. He did pretty good, man, with that spinnerbait. I was really proud of him that day, man. He was only 10 years old, but
That's
he
awesome.
wasn't getting hung up a lot, and he was casting. He was having fun, man. I love it when we go up there and get him in fishing. I just wish I had more time with him.
Let me ask you this. So a river that's been on my bucket list for a long time that I'm quite frankly afraid to go to because I hear it's very tough to navigate is the Chester. Do you ever put any time in up there, like the upper Chester above Crumpton?
Now are you talking up around, like, I think I've been at a
it's like more like the Chestertown area.
It's like Deep Landing State Park and above. So like
you're talking up the I've been at a court. I think it's Corsica. Is it Corsica? What is the place
I
we went out
fished there in 2016, 17?
In your boat or in your kayak?
No. This was back when I was fishing college.
Okay.
It was, we didn't drive from the flats, but we went down and fished around Ashland Landing and up. And
any good?
It was good, but this was the thing driving home. It's like, okay, can we get here 2 days in the row from the Northeast? And we were like, no.
That's a long ride.
And
a very long boat ride.
Because we were in college, we spent a month on the Upper Bay fishing every creek for one whole day through all tide cycles. And we just came to the conclusion, like, if we want to finish in the top 10, which is what you need to do to get to nationals, you got to play it semi-safe. And it's like, we followed Aaron Martin's day 2 when he went to the Middle River, and that was the first time. And I think I broke one bolt off my power pole, and I really jerked up my trolling motor going there. And it kind of like, we're like, it's just not worth it. There are fish down that way, but if it spits up at all in September in the fall on there, we're screwed.
Which it will.
Yeah, which it did.
To be fair, in September you want to stay up north anyway.
But we found a decent amount of fish back there. But but to your point, it's like it wasn't worth the risk.
Well, so what's the river like? Is it marked? I mean, can anybody just take a bass boat in there and be safe, or is it like, I don't know where the hell the channel
is? The answer is no. Okay. And even people that I know that fish it frequently, my buddy Mike Morris, last year definitely beached his boat on a mud flat for about 4 hours, and he's fished it a lot. So this is my 2 cents on tidal stuff: is always go to a new place on absolute low tide and mark the shit out of it with your Lowrance Humminbird Garmin, just so you have an idea of what the good stuff is or where you can stay. Yeah.
I mean, that's like the Marshy Hope. I mean, it's amazing how much water goes out of that river.
Yep.
I mean, you're going up there and you're almost top of where the boat the dock is, where you got it tied up to the ramp, and when you come down, it's like 7 foot, 8 foot, 7, 8 foot down. I mean, that tide, and it rolls. It took me a while to kind of learn. The Marshy Hope was my nemesis.
That's the crazy thing about the shore rivers is just how hard the current rolls down there.
It moves.
I was fishing I had a state tournament on the Chop Tank one year, and up toward Greensboro, the current was rolling so hard. I was on my trolling motor going with the current out there down the river. We were up by like the VFW, and we were breaking the 6 mile an hour speed limit in there on the trolling motor. I was doing 6.2 miles an hour on my trolling motor.
Yeah, that was something. Like I said, it's a learning curve, and I mean, it's been fun, and And if you can just, man, I guess it's like being on a lake and finding that point that just gets loaded where here I got a spot. If you can go to the spot 100 times and fish it, and you might catch one or two. But that I had one day it had to be only 20 minutes, and I swear I had 20 some pounds of fish, and that's not including the 2 10-pound freaking catfish I caught on my crankbait.
That's tidal fishing.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, it's so. A lot of times, especially on the shore, you have such narrow feeding windows that, like, it's just like anything you catch before a certain tide is just a bonus. On the Nanacoke, like a couple, was it last year? 2 years ago? Like, I knew I had pretty much exactly 45 minutes to catch my fish because they just were not eating aside from that 45-minute period. And I did catch one on high tide in the morning on a frog. That, again, that was just a bonus. I spent all morning on high tide frogging, just thinking, frogging pads and if I can get a fish or two, that's a bonus. And I know in this 45-minute period, I'm going to catch the majority of my weight. And that's what I love about the shore rivers is it's so much more difficult to break them down than it is like the upper bay.
It's a love-hate thing because tidal rivers, that's why there is that stigma of like a river rat. The tide goes in, the tide goes out, you're gonna have your feed windows and you got to be at the right place, right time. And if you really want to make it on the tour, you cannot just be a river rat because you will get your ass pounded on Lake Murray, on Kerr, on Smith. You have to have a balance because it's a completely different animal. And when I interview people like Travis, who just won down at Kerr like a month ago, he said, like, yeah, I get the shakes when I go to the Potomac. It's like, you just want me to sit in one spot? I ran 200 brush piles in 8 hours to win. And it's like, it's a completely different culture that you have to understand and be comfortable that if you are in the Bay or if you're on the Potomac, this is my area and I'm going to do that. I know some people can do milk runs. God bless you for it, but it's a different culture.
That's what I did Sunday. I picked my poles up like 3 times on Sunday.
I won't stay in one spot.
I do it. I milk it.
Because I know that they're eating somewhere on every tide. And the key to being able to find or to be successful or to be consistent on tidal water is to always be in a place where they're feeding at any given time.
Are you fishing hardcover or grass?
Depends.
Yeah. Like
here it may be that they're on a certain tide, they're on, they're pulling up on wood. On the low tide, I may need to be in the grass. On the incoming tide, they may be, they're pushing, or on the outgoing tide in the Susquehanna, if they're running water, I may need to be in the river. So just knowing where you need to be at certain times to be able to put yourself in a high percentage situation versus wasting half of your day waiting for the tide to get right.
Do you fish the James and the Potomac a lot?
I fish the Potomac a lot. I don't fish the James.
Compare and contrast that then with the Upper Bay fishing styles.
So the Potomac is a lot nicer than the Upper Bay because you can run the tide. There's so much more fishable water on the Potomac than there is the Upper Bay.
There's just more fish.
Because you can start at Potomac Creek and run to DC and you can chase the tide all day. You can't really do that on the Upper Bay because the main stem of the Upper Bay doesn't really hold fish. You're fishing, once you get off the flats, you're fishing creeks.
That's fascinating to me because you're one of the few that wants to gamble with the milk run. Like a lot of the old rats I know, it's like if there's 30 pounds in this creek, you're going to have 2 windows each day to catch it. And that's just interesting.
If you know when those windows are, why be there when you're outside of those windows?
I don't
disagree. If you know that you can catch, like if I know I can catch, a couple of 4-pound, like if I can go to Swan Creek on high tide and flip wood and I have a pretty good chance of catching a couple of 4-pounders. I'm going to be in Swan Creek on high tide versus the place that I know that I'm not getting bit on high tide.
No, I don't disagree with you. It's a different mindset. There's been a lot of people that have won in recent years bigger tournaments camping versus the milk run. But I think that's also why tidal river guys are so good in Florida is we are okay with fishing in crowds around people because we kind of have to. Like, when was the last major tournament that was won on a milk run?
Around
title,
here?
just title.
Winyah
Bay.
Well, I mean, that's not even a milk run, though.
Well, yeah.
I mean, because they were just running to one spot. It would probably be something on the Potomac.
I think Iaconelli, James River,
the All-American on the Potomac a few years ago. I mean, he was fishing multiple areas. He was in Mattawoman.
Yeah, I had him on.
Then running out.
He was Mattawoman to Chick, back and forth with the fluke. Yeah, interesting.
Chatterbait Mattawoman on the pads.
Yeah, interesting.
It's funny if you see the red and white boat in the background. That's my club president.
Really?
On the final day, yeah, fishing right next to him. We gave him a raft of shit about that. Me and my buddy, because like dude's fishing for $100,000. Like, you got to fish 40 feet from him. But it's beside the point. But yeah, like I would say something on the Potomac. A lot of the I know a lot of guys that do well on the Potomac that like they're not sitting in one spot. A lot of the common names you see at the top of the standings in tournaments, they're not staying in one spot.
Well, then what is the definition of a milk run? I think that's what's interesting. What is the definition of a milk run?
Following a tide, man. You're
Well, I mean, I would say a milk run is anywhere from three or four spots that you're rotating through.
The cows come home.
You may be rotating, versus camping, like you said, where you can go out and sit in the middle ditch on the flats and you can sit there all day, knowing that, I need to wait for the tide to get right. I need to wait to get the tide to get right. And in my mind, why, if I know low, they're going to eat on low tide, and low tide's at 1 o'clock, like, well, I need to be there at 12 o'clock. I don't need to be there from, 6 to 11.
Yeah. So I guess that's like, I think what we're talking about now is just the definition of what a milk run is. Because I think if you go from Mattawoman to Chick to like Monkey or Gunpowder, that's not as much of a milk run as is you start at Potomac Creek and you work your way all the way up to DC.
So I've done it on
so I would say, like, before. For me, a milk run is you have a few spots that you're rotating through versus chasing the tide. Chasing the tide, I think chasing the tide can be a little bit different than a milk run.
That's what I'm talking about. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
What were you saying, Tony?
So I've done it on Conowingo successfully. 2 years ago, me and Kevin Willingham got third in one of their big opens up there, and I figured it out the day before. I basically found one spot where I caught like two 4-pound smallmouth, and I was like, "What is it about this spot?" And then I saw another one on the map, and I was like, "Well, I'm going to go to that spot." And then I caught another good one, and I was like, "Okay, this is a thing." And then I didn't pre-fish probably 15 other spots. I marked them all on the map, and we rotated them in the tournament. We would stop on it. We'd fish it for no more than 10 minutes.
But that's
no more than. And then you would go, and then we almost pretty much caught a fish on every spot.
Yeah.
Caught like 50 fish that
That's
day.
Really common on a lake. If you look at people who fish lakes consistently, they don't camp.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they don't just camp for the most
unless
part,
you're Japanese.
or you're ledge fishing, or there are certain times where you may sit on one spot, but it's kind of the opposite.
I like what you said there about the difference between a milk run versus chasing the tide. I that makes sense to me and could you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. So for chasing the tide, what's for anybody who doesn't know what chasing the tide is. So if you're at the south end of the river, low tide is going to be a couple of hours before it is at the top end of the river. So if you start at the south end and work your way north, you can run the same exact tide for miles and miles of river, so that you're always on the type of structure that you want to fish at the tide you want to fish. So to me, that's more like lake pattern fishing.
Yeah, and more of
versus a milk run.
Yeah. Yeah,
which is, I have a couple of spots that hold fish, and I'm just going to rotate through them all day. If they stop biting here, I'm going to go to my next one. They stop biting there, I'm going to go to my next one. Then I'm going to go back to the first one. And I'm just circling through those 3 or 4 spots all day. That's my definition of a milk run.
And this is where I agree with you. Yeah. So then, I agree with the milk run, because like the problem I have with chasing the tide is you have to make sure that your timing is perfect or you've effed your whole day. And
that's why you just don't do it.
Exactly.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's hard. It is hard to do.
I don't do it. I've never done it. I'm a camper. You guys know.
You don't rotate your spots.
Well, not on the grass. Not in grass. If I find an area that's got 20 pounds, I would rather rotate baits and figure out how to catch them on high tide versus low tide versus in between tide.
So you would rather go one to the other.
But they may not be.
The other.
See, I don't have 5 spots that have 20 pounds in them. That's the thing.
Yeah,
I got 1 or 2.
But do you have 5 spots that have 1 4-pounder on them? Because if you have 5 spots that have 1 4-pounder on them, you have 20 pounds.
I don't believe. And so, all right, this is going to sound out there, but I grew up with horses, right? How many times have you ever seen a horse throughout a stand in one spot in a pasture? They move, right? I think certain high percentage areas attract fish. So when I find a patch of grass that I like, I'm not fishing for the 1 5-pounder I caught last Saturday. I'm fishing for the 5-pounders that are going to come to this area.
But what I'm saying to me is
multiple ones.
If you know that they eat on low tide there, like that's when I've catch them. I've been fishing this. I fished this area for 3 days. They only really eat. I may get a bite or 2 from a smaller fish on high tide, but the big ones are only feeding when 2 hours before low tide. But I know 4 other places that I have a good opportunity of catching a 4 to 5-pounder off of. They're high percentage areas that don't hold a lot of fish, but 1 or 2, I have a good opportunity of catching a good fish off of. Isn't it more time efficient to go fish those spots before your A spot is on?
It depends on what we're talking about.
It depends. Like I think in grass, I don't think it matters. If you're fishing like docks and hard structure, move around all you want, and that makes more sense. But to me, like again, it's the horse in the pasture, right? If you get next time you're driving when it's really really hot day, guess what's going to happen? All the horses are standing under the tree, right? They all go to that spot for a reason. It's the same thing. I think fish do the same thing. Now,
I'm not saying there's not fish in the area. I'm just saying your feeding window is small. You're wasting a large portion of your day waiting for those fish to eat when you could have went to other areas that are better on a different tide and caught a 4-pounder or a 5-pounder so that you didn't have to catch as many fish in that feeding window.
Yeah, but I mean, very rarely have I ever pulled up to a spot at a certain tide and caught any more than 3 fish at one time. Like this last tournament
That's
Saturday.
what I'm saying. That's why you're going to This is why I love this
podcast.
Like you have, say I have 4 or 5 spots. Like I know I can pull up to that spot and I can catch a good one off of it. Sure. So I mean, I catch 5 good ones off of it, but I can run there, catch a good one, go to the next spot, maybe catch a good one, and then go back to where I know there's a large population of bigger fish.
So you would run 3 different grass beds. Let's say you would run Mattawoman, Chick, and Belmont Bay all in the same day. Just grass.
More than that. I promise you Saturday. I'll be on the Potomac Saturday. I guarantee you I'll run more grass than that.
Shit, I did that, and I am a camper. I did that when I fished the Potomac in April.
Now it's a club tournament, so I'm not running to like a choir or anything. Like I'm not doing anything crazy, but yeah, I will definitely unless they're eating on all tides, I'm not just going to sit there and wait for the bite. I can't. One, my personality doesn't allow me to do that because I know they're eating somewhere else. Like I know I've fished enough tidal water to know that there are certain areas where you can catch fish on.
Agreed with that, Brian. Agreed with that, Brian. Yeah. I think
he was 100%. Yeah, that does make sense.
It just depends. It really does depend, I think, on the time of year, what you're dealing with. I've won big tournaments where it was early April on the Potomac and it's a spawning tournament and they're there and you just camp and you work through it. If it's the summertime, I've done it where you got to bounce and move around. It's a hard thing to say. It's a blanket, do this.
Yes, I agree.
I think if you're good at bouncing around, you should bounce around. If you're confident that you can catch fish in one spot, regardless of the tide, that's what you should do.
Yeah, and this is something I think kayaking kind of also showed, and the Japanese anglers have showed well. You have to have a place to run to catch them. And when they tell you to run 30 patterns or 30 points or 30 waypoints, do you have 30 set up? If not, fish Mattawoman all day and don't leave. And I promise you'll finish in the top 30. statistically, if you never leave Mattawoman in a tournament, you will probably finish in the top 30% because there's fish there.
I feel like that's like
You're going to catch, if you stay in Mattawoman, you're going to and fish it all day.
It's like Northeast.
Prime time of the year,
12 pounds,
you're catching
guaranteed.
15 to 18 pounds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
Guaranteed.
Again, this is where like when we have I've had people on like that has the knowledge. If you're not good at it, do not do it. And that's where I think there's this big divide. And it's personally for me, this is where I'm trying to have a come to Jesus moment. You need to have the experience of I know enough spots that I can make this work. Otherwise, you're just killing yourself and you should camp.
Yeah, no, like I fish completely different on Conowingo than I do on the bay. Like on the bay, I camp. On Wingo, I burn spots. Like I will fish 40 spots a day on Wingo.
It's different on a lake versus tidal too.
Yeah,
you know, on tidal water. Now you mentioned the spawn. Like I will camp a lot more during the spawn if like I know fish. You know, if I know fish are spawning in a grass bed. I fished. We had the Maryland Bass Nation Mr. Bass tournament back in April. I fished one spot for 2 days
for Maryland.
Yeah,
I was out. I think. Where did you go? Did you go into Pohick?
No, I was over. I was over in Occoquan.
We had our big kayak tournament then too. I think there's like 400 kayaks out that weekend. So yeah,
I saw a couple you got. And I finished second. I finished second in the tournament. I missed winning by half a pound. I literally fished the same 100-yard stretch for 2 days because I knew they were spawning there, and. Yeah, the fishing was tough, and like I knew I could grind out what I thought would be enough to qualify. I needed to be in the top 2 to qualify. You know, I ended up second place by 1/100th of a pound, which it was crazy close. But you know, you have to know when to camp and when not to.
That's hard. Yeah, that's the hard part.
And that it comes with experience. So you just have to.
Yeah.
I mean. You know, if it's like you said, you know, if it's a spawn, you may need to camp there. You know, if it's summertime, you probably, you know, camping's probably not a great idea in the summertime because for my experience, summertime, I don't catch a lot of fish in one area in the summertime. A lot of big fish. I'm usually picking off one here, one there on various places that I'm going. And it's more running patterns then. You know, so again, now I'm chasing tide because I'm looking for feeding fish versus spawning fish.
And what are you doing? Are you doing a one-day event? Are you doing a multi-day event? Are you fishing for points? Are you just trying to swing for the fence? Like these are also variables that have to go into your decision.
Absolutely. Yeah, especially multi-day tournaments because you need to know like how many fish you can pull out of an area before you need to leave that area. So if it's a spawn tournament and you have a little area to yourself. Like you catch 5 good ones out of there, you might just want to leave instead of trying to, you know, call fish or catch fish that aren't going to necessarily help you, that are going to be much more of a help to you tomorrow or the next day. Versus a one-day tournament where you just stay there and beat on them bitches.
Yeah. And it's a hot take, but I just feel like generally speaking for title stuff, it's sneakier places when those 4-day events versus just your standard 1-dayers where it's just the obvious places that have the most. I mean, that's why you have that one dock in DC that Justin Lucas goes to, or the Italian that goes to Potomac Creek or Nanjemoyne. Yep. Like, yeah, if you have 4 days, you have to get away from the crowd just to have enough fish to yourself to win. But otherwise, 100%. Yeah. Mattawoman and Pohick, there's a shit ton of fish. Aquia, a shit ton of fish, like the flats.
Leesylvania Rocks,
won again.
You know, so yeah, it's, I don't know. It's a really, you're absolutely right. You know, it depends on what you're fishing. Like multi-day tournaments are so hard for anyone. It doesn't matter if you're a professional or not, especially on tidal water, because your tide's changing every day. You know, if you have a late tide, a late low tide, you know, you may not get, you know, by the 4th day of the tournament, you may not get the tide that you want to fish. Yeah. It just may not be in tournament hours. So it can be really difficult, but like you said, there's a lot of variables that go into it on whether you should, you know, run the tide, whether you should have a milk run, whether you should camp. I mean, it's not to say like you can pull up. I know, and I've done, you know, multiple times on the Upper Bay and the Potomac, where, you know, you're making your milk run, you pull up on that one spot in the springtime when they're pre-spawn, and boom, you have 22 pounds in a half an hour. Mm-hmm. So, you know, if I did that on the Upper Bay one year, just it wasn't a big tournament. It was just a club tournament, but I was just running spots, and I pulled up on one spot and I caught 22 pounds in 45 minutes.
Yeah, and that's a good thing that you mentioned too.
And if I
like
had camped where I caught fish in practice, I would have never hit that spot. So,
and you make a really good point there, because if you're fishing a multi-day tournament, and I've always said this, I think multi-day tournaments are way easier because you can't. It's about batting for an average. It's not about swinging for the fence each time. So where, you camp for one day and you catch 12 or 13 pounds, but if you average that out through 3 days, it might put you up there versus if you crack them good day one, but you can't find them day two. And that really affects your brain and how you practice. You know, it's not about winning. It's about understanding the body of water enough that you can just catch them.
If you can catch an average limit
every
day, you're going to end up fishing day 3, maybe on day 4.
Yeah.
But you also have to realize too that like if you have a grass bed that's hot and it's got 40, 50 boats on it, like that Mr. Bass tournament that I fished, if it had been any more than 2 days, like there's no way I would have fished there, because it was it went from catching 20 on the first day with 40 to 50 other boats there to like I caught 5 keepers on the last day, and most of the people that were over there didn't catch a limit.
Agreed. And I think that's what's good about multi-day tournaments from a mindset, I think, is generically the weights are not going to be insane both days. And so you don't have to think, okay, I need to catch 25 pounds out of the beach. I need to find a place that I can go 15 to 16 both days. And that changes my mindset. If I was fishing at Potomac teams.
Did you just mention the beach?
Yeah, I mentioned the beach. I burn everything. But
Chad, that's okay. Chad doesn't know what the beach is.
If I'm fishing like the Potomac teams,
you have to throw me under the bus here. Like
Tony might know what the beach is.
It's a quiet creek. Everyone knows about it. For God's sakes, who cares?
I don't know nothing about it. Again.
Can you swim there?
You could swim on the whole Potomac.
Sure.
Technically,
I mean,
if you're brave enough.
The water's crystal clear there. I mean, just don't get caught up in any of the gill nets that are there right now.
Yeah, that's a whole other issue.
Sounds like a good time.
Yeah, that place is amazing.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're good. But no, my fact is like if you're fishing a Potomac teams 1 day event, yeah, you got to look for 25. If you're fishing anything that has multi-day, you're fishing for points. You're looking for that lower limit, and I do think that changes your practice mindset, which is important. How many spots do I need to dink and dunk? And I don't know. That's just that's where the game gets fun to me mentally is how you practice for it.
Me too. Yeah, that's my favorite part about bass, and it doesn't matter if I'm out fun fishing. If I'm fishing a tournament, my favorite part about bass fishing is figuring out the predominant pattern, like cracking that code. Like when I know, like when I figure them out. And Rob, who couldn't be here tonight, he went out with me on the Upper Bay one time. And when I fun fish, like I'm in a constant state of pre-fishing, like figuring out what that predominant pattern is. Like we're catching them on this one grass line. And like we go up and I catch like 9 off this one grass line. And then we get to the end of it. I was like, all right, we're going to go over here. And Rob's like, you just caught 9. why are you leaving? I was like, well, because I want to see if they're over there too. Like, that's what I love the most about fishing and tournament fishing is just cracking that code.
But the question was always asked to me, when to leave fish to find fish? You know what I mean?
In practice,
or do you leave fish to find fish? You know what I mean?
Well, okay, that's another good a good thing to talk about because some people will say that, oh well, I didn't want to leave fish to find fish. Well, yeah, but you were only catching 2-pounders all day,
right?
Like in a 1-day tournament, 2-pounders aren't doing you any good.
It depends. Like, and that's the thing is like it depends. Is it like you were catching 2-pounders or 3-pounders? Like on the Potomac and the Bay, like if you catch 14 to 15 pounds, that's a decent check. Probably not winning, not losing, but you're catching them consistently. And this is an interesting brain teaser. Do you then say, oh, I'm going to flip everything completely? Or is it, I should just stay and cycle through until I get that bigger bite? Or is it like what you said, you're just catching 2-pounders and like, well, this sucks. And that is a gut punch because I don't think there's a right answer.
Yeah. I mean, it's a catch-22, right? Because you can stay there and continue to catch 2-pounders and maybe get into a big one. You could leave and maybe catch a big one or not catch anything. So, it's a really hard mental decision to be able to make. I think it's, having enough experience to know if I'm only catching 2-pounders, like I need to leave. because I'm wasting too much time culling, not even culling through, but just,
or at least
burning up these 2-pounders, especially in a multi-day tournament too.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're fishing a multi-day tournament, you're burning through 2-pounders. I mean, those are fish that you may need tomorrow.
Yeah.
And you're burning them all up for what? To cull, from 12 pounds to 13 pounds. Where, if I'm fishing, a 2 or 3 day tournament and I have 12 pounds now, and I know there's a ton of these 2 to 2.5 pounders here. Okay. I can leave those and not catch anything versus staying there and catching 13 pounds, come back on the next day, catch my 12 or 13 pounds, and I'm good. If I burn up all my fish trying to cull from 12 pounds to 13 pounds, what good did that do me? Because now on the second day, what am I catching?
Yeah. And you need to know
mental game.
Yeah. You have, there's so many factors. Cause again, it's like, are we fishing Okeechobee? Are we fishing up north where it is ounces to where, maybe if we're weighing, cause again, if you guys fish up north,
or largemouth.
Yeah. Cause if you're on Champlain, a 2.8 versus a 2.1 is massive there compared to down south where, you need that 3 to 4 pound jump. And so, the variable there of like, it's not just, it's each body of water each time of year helps make that decision of what you should do.
Right. And like I said, largemouth or smallmouth makes a difference too, because, out of areas, especially in New York, if you're catching 2 pound smallmouth, you're only going to catch 2 pound smallmouth.
Yep. 100%.
They school together. They school in size class. So Ontario is big for that. I love Ontario. It's my favorite place in the world to fish. But if you're catching 2 pounders, you're most likely only catching 2 pounders out of that school. But if you catch a 4 and there's you see on live scope or you on down imaging or 2D and you see 4 or 5 more, they're probably also 4 pounders. So you should probably keep fishing there.
Yeah.
So it really makes a difference on where you're fishing, what species you're fishing for. Spotted bass are known for that as well. Spotted bass will school by size sometimes. I don't have a ton of experience fishing spotted bass, but I have fished for them a little bit. But there's so many factors that come into it that like your average person, if you're just going out and you're fishing a weekend tournament and you're not out there 4 or 5 days a week like I am, or 3 days a week like Tony is sometimes, and you went out the weekend before and you found a nice little area that had some fish in it, you're probably better off camping in that spot because you don't have 16 spots in the grass that you caught 4 pounders out of. So going back to like your camping or milk running or running the tide, I think a lot of it goes with just time on the water. If you don't have the time to figure out those 16 spots, then you're probably better off just camping.
Yeah. And it's just, are you trying to win it or just place? Like, I think that's, if you're trying to win AOI and you need points to survive, don't leave Mattawoman and you'll be okay. If you're trying to swing for the fence and win it, you got to get out of Mattawoman and look around. And I think the Japanese anglers really have shown this where they figure out an area and they're like, well, we'll just pick it apart. And when you listen to them or watch their YouTube channels, they have 6 fish in their country. So they learn real good at how to pick everything apart. And that's also changed my mindset. It's like, well, how many fish are we fishing over that we should not? Because some of these guys are just freaking snipers. And it's a unique mindset where our idea is like, there's no fish here, we need to leave, versus them is like, well, there are fish here, I just need to figure them out.
Right.
And with forward-facing sonar and that mindset, the way that they're able to pull crap out of areas is just mind-boggling.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree with that. And it's just different mindsets. And you really just have to do, like, you mentioned earlier, do what works best for you. For me, I can't sit still. Like I'm a very fidgety person. So sitting in one place and just camping there that will mess with my head way too much if I'm not getting bit.
Do you like Blue Black Lakes?
I love Murray's one of my favorite.
I think so.
I like Blueback Lakes. I like Lake Douglas is another one I really like. That's not a blueback lake. I mean, that's a gizzard shad lake. I like fishing offshore. Anywhere I can fish offshore, I'm happy.
Blueback seemed like it would be perfect with your mindset of just
because I can run 100 points in a day and just wait till they just find the one they're pulling up. But that's hard too because if you get you get in a bad rotation, Like you're pulling up on points and there's just nothing there, and you go point to point to point to point, and there's nothing. And then the next day you do the same exact thing again, but your timing is just a little different, and then you're hitting them on they're busting on every point that you go to. So that can kind of mess with your head too.
It does. Like our first college national championship was on Lake Murray, and we got our teeth kicked in being river rats. And our next one, I think, was on Kiwi or Hartwell. And the difference of understanding, like, yeah, you just get up on the front of the boat, you make 2 casts and leave. That felt wrong coming from just fishing the Potomac and the Bay. But then when you spend enough time there and you realize, like, you have to, it is literally get up, cast, they're not here, go. You got to get on that rotation correctly when those fish are pulling up.
And I will say, I learned from, I fished like 10 years ago, like 12 years ago now. I fished a BASS regional, nation regional, and guy who's I still talk to this day, Bill Lords. He's a guide on Ontario. We were fishing Douglas. And he taught me so much about fishing offshore and how to know when you pull up to that point using your electronics, whether you're going to catch those fish or not. Because he would scan over the point, look at the fish on 2D and be like, hey, I can't catch these. And we'd go to the next one.
I'll tell you the biggest thing
when they're positioned right, when you learn what the positioning is of those fish when they're feeding, like you can almost call your shots.
And I think the biggest thing to me that changed it for me offshore fishing was when I got the spot 1 antenna from Lowrance. That was such a big game changer that I don't think people talk about nowadays, to where you could just line up and call your shot. Like the boat's pointed there within 40 feet. You can drop and cast and go.
Yep.
Because everyone bitches about side scan and forward facing sonar, but these other things that we use that
Mega 360.
Yeah, a 360. I have one on my boat there too.
I can't fish without it.
I want to try the scout mode to see, because everyone keeps telling me SB fishing, and some of my friends say like it's legit, like just as good if not better than 360, which I don't want to believe.
I need to try it out too.
But
I've not tried out I have live scope, so like I have not tried out the what is the
scout mode or whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Perspective mode?
Perspective. That's it.
Perspective.
I don't know why I couldn't think of that.
Perspective mode is the best. I use it 90%. I first I didn't use it when I started messing with live scope, and now I use it when I'm on the bay. I used to never use live scope, like just because it's 2 feet of water full of grass. But now it's in perspective like all the time. If I'm in less than 5 feet of water, it's in perspective. There's just no question.
Unless the grass is topped out, I'm almost always using forward mode because I can see how high the grass is. So like I can see that this patch of grass is a foot off the bottom, but this is 2.5 feet off the bottom. Like, or
you just use both. Like just use 360 and forward.
Right. That's what I do. So I don't use perspective. I use 360 to locate the grass, and then I use live scope just to see how. I'm not using it for fish. I'm using it to see how high the grass is.
And then when you turn it off.
Spring. Oh God!
When do you turn it? I don't pay attention to it.
That's a whole. I think there's a Pandora's box there when they're spawning and stuff. You get 30 boats around. When you turn all that shit off in your boat, I think it gets you a couple more bites.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Yeah. I was confusing what you were. Yeah. Absolutely. Ran into that on the Potomac, fishing a TBF tournament one year. Me and my tournament partner. We were camping because we didn't really have anything else. So we were camping in Chickamauga, and we knew they were spawning in there. And like we had like 2 small keepers in the boat, and we quickly not quickly at the end of the day, and my buddy was just like, you know what, I don't need my electronics. I'm just going to turn them off, save the battery, because we're fishing Chickamauga, and like we know everything in Chickamauga. And so we turned the electronics off, put the pole down, so we're not using the trolling motor.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually taking a nap on the back deck. It's been that slow. Like he's sitting in the chair on the back deck, like taking a nap, like just like exhausted. It's hot. I catch a 4-pounder. Like he gets up, we kind of figured out like, wait a second. Like we weren't catching anything all day. And then we turned all the electronics off, stopped touching the trolling motor. And we sat in one spot. We caught 4, caught a 3, caught a 3.5, moved to another spot, 4, 3, 3. like we would move like 10 feet at a time and just fan cast around the boat with no electronics or anything on. And in the last hour and a half of the day, we caught 19 pounds.
Stealth. It's people don't talk about it. It's a big deal nowadays. It really is.
And this was a pre-COVID. I mean, that tournament was pre-COVID, like before the huge influx of people on the Potomac. But I mean, it was still, there's, it's still crowded, but there were only like 8 boats in Chickamauga in that day.